Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in Season 2 Part 2 of What If the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 3, A Meeting of Heroes and Robots. There had been a lingering feeling of both excitement, apprehension and confusion since the Autobots dropped off Izuku, Kyoka, Momo and Mei at the topside of Tokuyama Dam. While the four students could have easily ridden into Sector 7's base with the Autobots on the hidden platform just some odd meters away from the dam itself, Optimus and All Might had been insistent on them being led in via one of the agents, which was perplexing to all of them. Okay, remind me, why exactly do we have to wait for one of those wingnuts to bring us in? Kyoka asked the symbol of peace with her arms crossed. I mean, it's not like there isn't a perfectly good entrance right over there. All Might waved to the Autobots as they disappeared into the nearby forested area, away from prying eyes and toward the lift. But young Jiro, that would ruin the surprise. The muscular man gave a thumbs up to her. Trust me, by going in this way, you'll be treated to something that will blow all of your minds, I'm sure of it. Yeah, about that All Might, Izuku muttered while tilting his head. You've been really secretive about this meeting since yesterday, and not to point fingers or anything, but it's really suspicious. Yes, what exactly is going on here? Momo added as she placed a hand on her hip. Mei shifted her eyes around warily. We're not about to be ambushed by them again, are we? Ho ho, of course not. All Might waved off instantly. Remember, Sector 7 are our allies now, and I trust Bill Fowler with my very life. Trust me, the days about you worrying about them are over. Kyoka pursed her lips in a tight pout, her eyes narrowing a bit. HMPH, well for their sake, it'd better be. I assure you, this will be quite the exciting experience. TSSSSSSs. The sound of a sudden hiss caught the group off guard, but the moment they turned around, they saw the side of the dam begin to open up, with steamy air billowing from the sliding door. And behind said door was a womanly silhouette that came right out to greet them. And here is our escort. Standing before them was a young Caucasian woman in her early 30s with flowing brown hair and a pair of bright blue eyes, donned in a white medical coat with a red shirt underneath. She smiled to all of them as she stepped out. Well, aren't you guys a sight for sore eyes? Immediately, the group of teens all brightened up at the woman's presence. Agent Fairborn. They all echoed before Kyoka let out a sigh. Oh thank God, the one agent I actually like. Fairborn raised her brow at the strange compliment. I'm flattered. But again guys, call me Marissa. She raised a brow to them and curiously leaned forward. So, how was school yesterday? I heard that the meteor shower was the talk of the town yesterday. Yeah, it was. Izuku confirmed. Honestly, it's almost like everyone in town forgot about the villain attack on the USJ. Almost. Momo stressed. It was still all over the news, just less so than the meteor shower. So, I take it we're wanted inside. Marissa gave them all a nod. Indeed you are. She waved her hand toward the open doorway, ushering the group inside. So, shall we? Following her lead, the teens and All Might all strolled through the sliding doors and into a small room, which immediately closed as Marissa pushed a button on the wall. Before any one of them knew it, they felt themselves moving downward, going deeper and deeper beneath the Tokuyama Dam and into Sector 7's secret base. So, Agent Fairborn, are the others here yet? All Might asked. The agent, however, shook her head. Nope, not yet, but they should be soon. She wore a knowing smirk as she eyed the three girls and Izuku behind her. You guys are all gonna have your socks knocked off during today's meeting. Kyoka rolled her eyes and slapped her forehead. Oh come on, you too, Marissa. Mei grasped at her dreadlocks and shouted, is there anyone who can be straightforward with us today? Relax guys, it's all part of the fun. Marissa winked. Trust me, when you see Fowler's little surprise, you're gonna be stoked. This surprise had better be good, then. Kyoka hummed uncertainly. But the fact that Fowler's involved in this doesn't give me much hope. Marissa sent the punk girl a sympathetic look. Still don't fully trust him, huh? Not particularly. Dude almost had us put under government arrest. A sigh escaped Marissa's throat and she nodded solemnly. I know, but believe me, he regrets going through with that just as much as the rest of us do." She balled a fist in frustration. The fact that those two Decepti creeps tricked us so easily, it still makes us all mad. Hey, it's all in the past now, right? Izuku assured. I mean, yeah, getting tricked was pretty bad, but in the end, everything worked out and we not only stopped Shatter and Dropkick, but we stopped them for good. Midoriya's right. Momo smiled. It's time that we all moved on from it. She shot a glance over to her purple-haired friend. Right, Kyoka. She got a somewhat affirming grumble in response, and she sighed knowing that it was probably the best she was going to get for now. Talk about holding a grudge. With another ding from the elevator, they felt themselves come to a stop and the doors parted open, letting them into a hallway that Marissa did not hesitate to go down. Follow me. Agent Burns is waiting for us. The teens and Pro Hero silently followed her until another set of automatic doors slid open, allowing them to step into a rather spacious boardroom that had a massive, round table at the very center. And, sitting on the opposite side of it, was a Caucasian man in his mid-30s with blonde hair and blue eyes in standard Sector 7 body armor, and he seemed to be catching up on some sleep. Miranda deadpanned at the sight and groaned. Really? She cupped her hand and shouted, "Burns! Up and at him!" After letting out a surprised snort, the eyes of Agent Jacob Burns snapped open and he let out a yelp, falling out of his chair and onto the floor much to the teens' amusement. Once he got himself collected, he brushed off the mishap and greeted them dutifully. Morning everyone, good to see you've arrived. He approached them and addressed the symbol of peace first with a salute. All Might, good to see you again. Likewise, Agent Burns. All Might saluted back, getting a few Z's in before the big meeting. Hey, what can I say, it's been a busy couple of days. I see. The hero nudged his head back to the students. I'm sure you remember my charges. Hey, how could I forget? Those kids are a big reason why our bacon was saved. Burns bowed his head slightly to the teenagers. And I'd be remiss if I didn't apologize again for, trying to have you arrested. No big, Agent Burns. May waved off. That's all in the past. Kyoka glanced to the side. I mean, it happened all of 2 days ago, but yes, technically it's in the past. Miss Jiro, I know that it's not exactly, keen to trust the government, Agent Burns murmured, especially after what we put you through. The purplet raised a brow at him. Wow, keen. When was the last time that word was used? Gah. Burns facepalmed before moving on. My point is that I hope that we can earn your trust over the course of our partnership with the Autobots. His smile returned with a knowing wink. And I especially think you all will enjoy what we have planned for you today. I'll believe whatever it is when I see it. So, what exactly is this meeting waiting on? Just then, however, another set of double doors opened up on a different side of the room, and a rather powerful, booming voice came reverberating through the boardroom. For everyone to show up, that's what. The group snapped their heads around to see another man come walking up to them with a very confident stride and a serious face. He was African American and in his late 40s, with a bit of a paunch on him to show his age. His hair was black and thinning near his forehead, and he wore a bluish-gray three-piece suit with a striped tie and black shoes. His brown eyes settled onto All Might and his serious demeanor switched to a slight grin. Hey, well at least I know someone likes to keep a good schedule. Don't be so hard on them, Bill. All Might assured. I'm sure they'll come through any one of these doors any minute now. Here's hoppin'. Agent Fowler agreed before moving his sights back to the children. So kids, how was the first day back at school after the incident? Kyoka placed a hand to her hip and furrowed her brow at Fowler. I think you mean, incidents, don't you Agent Fowler? Ya know, as in plural. Fowler groaned and pinched the bridge of his nose. Oh God, this again, he muttered. All right young lady, I know what we did was a complete mistake, but I assure you, the rest of Sector 7 and I want nothing more than to move on from this mistake and start fresh with the Autobots. He placed his right hand over his heart while raising his right hand. Scout's honor. Hey, I'm not saying I don't believe you're committed to that, Fowler. Kyoka shook her head before smirking at the agent. I'm just saying that you'd better believe I'm gonna hold you to that, and I'm gonna keep reminding you until I'm fully convinced. Fowler pursed his lips in annoyance, shooting a glare at the punk teenager. You really like to hold grudges, don't you? Only when I have to. Kyoka fired back. And believe me, I hold on to him tight. Oh okay, let's not escalate things here, shall we? Izuku stepped between the two to separate them, hoping to calm things down a bit. Why don't we get down to the big reason why we're here, huh? He set his focus back to Fowler curiously. So, Agent Fowler, what exactly were you talking about before? About others meeting us here. Momo put a finger to her chin in thought. Yes, I'm pretty sure that we're the only ones who know about the Autobots, aren't we? Yeah, plus my uncle. May reminded. Ooh, is he the one meeting us here? No, but your uncle has been contacted by our people. Agent Burns informed. He's assured us that he'll stay quiet on the matter of giant alien robots making their home on Earth. A smirk came to the man's face. Which is good, because that means one less person to kidnap and mindwipe. Ow. Marissa. Fairborn gave Burns a rather upset expression. Really Jacob, we're trying to earn their trust here and you're making jokes about that. Hey, what can I say? Just trying to lighten the mood a bit. Well, it's not helping. Marissa bluntly put, causing the teens to laugh at Jacob's expense. Now, let's try to get back on track, shall we? A splendid idea. Everyone's eyes widened the moment they heard a new voice enter the room, this one very light and kind-hearted. They all did an about-face back to the door where Fowler came through, and all at once, Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo felt their jaws drop in shock. Making their way toward them was a short, bipedal mammalian creature with white fur and a scar over his right eye, wearing a navy blue vest, a matching pair of pants, orange sneakers and a white undershirt with a red tie. But his appearance wasn't what had stunned them, it was the fact that it was none other than the school principal of UA himself. Principal Nezu. The teens all exclaimed, "What are you doing here?" Nezu raised his right paw and waved to the group. "Greetings, students. I hope you're all having a good weekend." He then gestured behind him to someone else who was entering the room. "I'm sure you all must be quite surprised to see us here." The teens moved their sights up, and at that point, their jaws had hit the ground. "Mr. Aizawa." Who's that?" Mei asked, being the only one who didn't recognize the mummified pro-hero. "He's our homeroom teacher," Momo exclaimed as the dark-haired man set his bloodshot gaze onto them. "Mr. Aizawa, what in the world are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question, Miss Yaoyorozu." Aizawa mumbled irritably under his bandages, all while scanning his eyes across his students. "In fact, that goes for all of you, especially you, problem child." Izuku couldn't help but squirm under Aizawa's scrutinizing stare as he said that. "Why is it that everything seems to lead right back to you?" Izuku felt his bones rattling, he was so nervous. Well, I wouldn't really say everything leads back to me, but, oof. All Might suddenly placed a hand onto Izuku's shoulder, giving Aizawa his signature smile. "Put the brakes on the interrogation, Aizawa. This is my doing. In a way, I ended up getting young Midoriya and everyone else here roped into this mess, so if you're going to blame someone, blame me." Aizawa narrowed his eyes at the symbol of peace, glancing between him and Izuku. "So, I guess this is why you've been in his corner since coming to UA." Both Izuku and All Might flinched at that. Just what the hell is all of this about, anyway? Fowler cleared his throat, trying to get things back on track. "Well, erase your head, if you're patient, we will tell you. Agent Fowler, I'm a very busy man with homework to grade and sleep to catch up on." Aizawa argued. "If this is a waste of my time. Now, let's not make a fuss." Nezu raised his paws, bringing everyone's attention back to him. "Mr. Aizawa, I assure you that this meeting is of the utmost importance. I wouldn't ask you to come if I didn't think it wasn't. However, there are still yet more people who need to gather here first before all can be explained. So, if you would be so kind." While Aizawa saw the kind smile that Nezu was giving him, he could definitely tell that the mammalian principal was definitely quite serious. With a heavy sigh, Aizawa closed his eyes and relented. "All right, fine, we'll wait, but I hope this is at least good enough to get out of bed for." "My sentiments exactly." Once again, another voice rang out through the entire boardroom, though this one was much deeper than before. This time, though, they came from a different set of doors, and once everyone faced the right side of the room, the teens could be heard giving audible gasps at who they saw. 3 men were approaching them, though they were not any ordinary men. Only replace, get out of bed, with, leaving work. The booming voice came from the man walking in front of the other 2. Compared to them, he was a mountain who had the same physique as All Might, and his appearance was comparatively bombastic while also mixing in a lot of intimidation factor. He wore a permanent scowl that was literally covered in a mask of fire, which practically blew out on all sides of his head, which helped create a fiery beard and mustache. His head was topped with red hair that was combed upward in a sort of buzzcut, and his suit was a combination of spandex and armor with metallic shoulder pads and gauntlets. What's more, he had patterns all across his costume that heated up with his flames, right down to his boots, which were completely engulfed by them. Behind him were 2 other men who each had different looks to them in their costumes. On his right was a man in what appeared to be a brown aviator's outfit, complete with white fur lined on the interior and collar of his jacket. He also had messy brown hair, a bit of a goatee on his chin, a pair of yellow goggles over his eyes, and he wore a black undershirt with yellow patterns on it. But what stood out the most were the pair of massive wings that were prominently sticking out of his back. The man gave a yawn and scratched the back of his head. "Ha, speak for yourself, Endeavor. I was up all night helping pick up after that crazy meteor shower. You'd think a guy could get some sleep, right?" Walking next to him was a rather skinny man who seemed to be wearing blue jeans, on both his lower and upper torso. He had somehow styled an entire pair of jeans into a jacket that even went over his whole lower face, which was secured by, yes, a belt. It left only his eyes and neatly combed hair exposed, and the moment the winged man made the comment, he rolled his eyes. "Please, Hawks, one early morning meeting won't kill you." As the 3 approached, Izuku let out a high-pitched gasp that made the girls do a double take. "Ah, I don't believe it. It's 3 of the other top-ranked pros." "I know," Kyoka exclaimed in excitement as she eyed the Jean Man. "The fiber hero, best jeanist." Mei set her sights on the winged man. "The winged hero, Hawks." Momo finished up by moving her sights to the larger man in front. "And the flame hero, Endeavor. They're ranked 4th, 3rd, and 2nd respectively. This is astonishing, to say the least." At that moment, though, Best Jeanist paused when he heard the teens say their names. And what's more, he actually recognized a few of them. "Wait, hold on, why are there first-year UA students in a secret government facility?" Those words finally got Endeavor to notice as well, and his eyes shot open as if the worst news possible had just been delivered to him. "What?" The teens all flinched as the number 2 hero's lips curled up into a snarl, his dark yet fiery eyes glaring at them as he stormed forward. "These children shouldn't be in here. Someone get them out right. Whoa ho ho. Slow down there, Endeavor old chum." All Might thrust himself in front of Izuku and the girls, extending his arms out to his sides as a barricade. Endeavor skid to a halt, staring at All Might in shock and appall. "After all, these children are part of the whole reason why you all are here." If anything, this just seemed to aggravate Endeavor even more, his fire beginning to flare up. "All Might, what are you talking about? They're just as involved with this situation as any of us are." All Might explained. "Trust me, I've been with them pretty much every step of the way so far, and I in Sector 7 can assure you, they are not breaching any security by being here." He slightly narrowed his eyes and put a bit of an edge to his voice. "So if you would be so kind, please show them some respect." Endeavor's fists clenched in ire, but the moment he saw Fowler and the other Sector 7 agents' faces, he had a feeling that what the symbol of peace was saying was true. That fact frustrated him to no end, but he still needed to abide by the rules. He took in a deep breath and growled out a sigh, his flames dying down a bit. "Very well," he pointed a strict finger to the 4 teens, making them jump again. "But if any one of them leaks even a single piece of information from here, I will see to it that we will make sure they receive the necessary punishments if that happens." Fowler snapped back at Endeavor, getting right up into the Flame Hero's personal bubble. He grimaced up to the much taller man, who glowered right back. "Am I clear, Mr. Endeavor?" Endeavor pursed his lips and nodded curtly. "Of course, Agent Fowler." He waved his hand and stepped away. "You're the boss." As Endeavor walked off to let off some steam, Izuku, Momo, Kyoka and Mei all peeked out from behind Fowler and All Might to watch him. Wow, so that's Todoroki's father. Izuku murmured. He's a big jerk, Kyoka whispered, causing Izuku to let out a sudden shout. I mean, seriously, way to fly off the handle. As much as I want to disagree, you're right, Kyoka. Momo concurred, crossing her arms. That was very uncalled for. Mei raised a finger to the two. Gals, I wouldn't say that too loud. She pointed to Endeavor and put a hand to the side of her mouth. You never know if he could be listening. Just then, however, Hawks and Best Jeanist both came up to the teens, the former offering them a smile. Don't worry about Endeavor. He's usually cranky this early in the morning, especially when he hasn't had his cup of joe. They heard Endeavor grumble at him before Hawks gave them a salute. Anyway, I saw you kids on the news the other day. Nice job surviving that villain attack on the USJ. Yes, it's very impressive that all of you kids managed to make it out of there alive. Best Jeanist concurred. I anticipate what you all can bring to the table in the sports festival. The group brightened up at that, and Kyoka was about to say something, when Izuku went into fanboy mode. Hawks and Best Jeanist. I'm a huge fan of both of your work. He rounded about on the winged hero, causing him to step back a bit. Hawks, the way you used your feathers to create that makeshift lightning rod against that electric villain last week was ingenious. He then spun around to Best Jeanist, who gasped in response. And Best Jeanist, how you sewed that ram villain's wool into a straitjacket and then wrapped him up in it last month was incredibly awesome. You guys and All Might are just amazing and the kinds of heroes I aspire to be. And before long, Izuku had gone into a full-on mutterfest, and truth be told, it was starting to freak the others out a bit. Hawks leaned over toward Kyoka and asked, does your friend do this often? Only when in the presence of heroes that he hasn't met yet. Hang on. Kyoka pulled up one of her earphone jacks and jabbed it into Izuku's side, causing him to yelp and tense up as he hit the ground. Pump the brakes there, celery stick, you're talking a mile a minute. Once the twitching had subsided, Izuku shuddered and shook his head, letting out a nervous chuckle. Sorry about that. Hey, no problem, kid. Hawks pointed to him with a smirk. Truth be told, I like your enthusiasm. Indeed. Best Jeanist nodded. It'll serve you well on your way to one day becoming a true hero. Izuku stiffly bowed to them in respect. Thank you, that means a lot, but then, Izuku blinked a couple times, a realization slowly beginning to dawn on him. Hey, wait a second, he moved his head back up and began shifting his eyes between the pro-heroes. All Might, Endeavor, Hawks and Best Jeanist, if you four are here, then, does that mean? Yep, surprise, Marissa shouted. We've got Japan's top 10 pro-heroes gathering here for the important meeting we've been talking about. The teens were all completely floored by the news. No freaking way. Kyoka cried out excitedly. You mean they're all coming right here? Agent Fowler cleared his throat to interject. Well, not exactly all of them. Pros number 7, Damage Control, and number 8, Yoroi Musha, weren't available. They're both in the middle of critical sting operations that can't be interrupted, so them meeting our special friends will have to come at a later date. He wore a knowing grin as he gave them a salute. But don't worry, I'm sure you'll meet the both of them sometime down the line. Mei gave a small shrug. Well, hey, 8 out of 10 isn't bad. Yes, you're right. Momo's face lit up in a bright smile as her eyes began shimmering in anticipation. Either way, we're going to be meeting most of Japan's greatest heroes. At the sound of another door opening, All Might perked his head up and let out a hard laugh as he waved in the newcomer's direction. Well, you kids may want to turn around, because here comes more of them now. Greetings all. All Might. The teens all turned to the new voice that entered the room, only to be suddenly bypassed by a green and black blur. Once they four of them got their bearings, they laid their sights on who had just thrown them for a loop. He was a man who appeared to be in his late 40s with a muscular build and black, slicked back hair that was graying down the middle. He wore a long, green cape and a black eye mask that had a silver brow piece over it, and he was donned in a black, red and gold Greco-styled costume complete with an PTERUGES around his waist. The back of his right hand was also covered in a layer of dirt, likely due to his quirk. What's more, he was shaking All Might's hand furiously with a big smile. It's so very good to see you again. It's always an honor to be in your presence, good sir. Ah ha ha. Crust, my good man. Always a pleasure to see you as well. All Might guffawed as he happily shook the hero's hand. He then gestured over to the children, which took Crust off guard a bit. Allow me to introduce you to my charges. These are young Izuku Midoriya, Kyoka Jiro, Mei Hatsume and Momo Yaoyorozu. They are. Ah, you three are from Class 1A. His smile unrelenting, Crust went over and shook each of the 1A students' hands, taking them all by surprise. And what's more, he seemed to be tearing up a little bit. I saw you kids on the news the other day and I must say that your class is one of the bravest groups of young aspiring heroes that I've ever seen. A whimper escaped his throat and he threw his head back, covering his eyes with his forearm. I'm so sorry about what happened at the USJ. If I had known about the break-in, I would have rushed right over to help save you kids from experiencing something like that. BWAH ha ha. As the man started weeping, the teens all stared at him wide-eyed, feeling somewhat awkward as All Might began to console him. Oh dear, sorry about that, kids. The sound of a feminine voice alerted the teens to someone standing directly behind them. Crust is a very emotional soul. He tends to do this a lot. Another deeper, masculine voice added. They all turned around, and Kyoka and Momo let out the loudest gasps imaginable. Standing before them was a beautiful woman with short blonde hair and yellow eyes, her pupils in the shape of slits like a lizard's. She wore a green headband around her head with a claw-shaped headpiece that covered her right eye, along with a pair of black dragon-like wings sticking out the sides. She also wore a dark red quipao as her hero costume, with yellow slashing patterns on her skirt and neckline. She also wore long, white handless gloves that almost resembled sleeves and black boots, completing her ensemble. And standing next to her, was a humanoid killer whale in a white suit. The collar on this suit was so high that the diamond-shaped studs on it almost blended into his head, making them resembled orca teeth. It didn't help that his long, pale pink tie kind of resembled a tongue as well. To finish his costume, he wore a long cape that was the same color as himself, making it look like a part of him. Kyoka and Momo both had stars in their eyes as they concentrated on the woman. AAAAAH. The Dragoon hero, Yukio. Izuku was jittering at the sight of the humanoid marine mammal as well. And the killer whale hero, Gang Orca. Yukio couldn't help but let out a small chuckle as she glanced toward Orca. Well, seems we're not lacking in fans around here, are we? No, we aren't. Orca concurred before lowering his head down to Izuku curiously. Though that begs the question, why are there 1A students inside the Sector 7 base? He heard a slight grumble from Endeavor, though he chose to ignore it. Don't worry, gang, they've got special clearance. Fowler assured. In fact, these kids are part of the reason why you're all here in the first place. Gang Orca tapped the side of his chin, his interest piqued. Really, now? Well, this is certainly different. Yes, but it's very charming to see. Yukio mused as she smiled down to the girls. I usually don't work with kids this young until the internships, but I have to say, after hearing about how your class pulled through that villain attack, you'd better believe I'm keeping an eye on every one of you. Momo couldn't help but give a delighted shriek, which Kyoka had to hold herself back from doing. Did you hear that? I did and I seriously can't believe it. Kyoka concurred before both girls bowed to Yukio in respect. You have no idea how much that means to us, Miss Yukio, we're big fans of you. I can tell. Yukio winked. You'd better believe that I'll be watching both of you and your classmates during the sports festival, so I extend my best wishes to both of you. Thank you so very much. Kyoka and Momo echoed. At that moment, though, Endeavor came back over and butted in on the conversation. Alright, I believe we've had enough formalities for the time being. We're here on business, not to have a social gathering. The two girls stepped back in uncertainty while Yukio furrowed her brow at the number 2 hero. Oh, for God's sake, Endeavor, must you always be a spoilsport? They're aspiring heroes, and as pros, it's our duty to encourage them to give their best in their abilities. If anything, though, this only deepened Endeavor's scowl. HMPH, please. A hero should be judged by their strength, and they don't develop that strength through paltry words. He glanced toward Izuku and the girls, which was met with uncertain stares and a glare back from Kyoka. If they wish to truly develop into worthy heroes, they should take a page from Shoto's book. Intense and absolute focus on one's training without any distractions, that is how a hero is made. Kyoka narrowed her eyes at the man and mumbled, I get the feeling he ain't winning any Father of the Year awards. What was that? Endeavor questioned. Oh nothing, just making a mental note, the perplexed sarcastically replied. One that says, never take advice from Endeavor. Okay, let's not go down any bad roads here, Hawks stepped in with his hands raised. Remember, we're here for a reason, right? Best Jeanist crossed his arms and glanced around the room. Indeed, but we're still missing someone. Where is Edgeshot? Right behind you. Ah. Best Jeanist and everyone else spun around to see what appeared to be some sort of thin material come rushing past everyone before it suddenly began to take shape, transforming into a man. The first thing that everyone noticed about him was his hair, which was stylized into 3 separate points, with 2 on top of his head while the other came down over his right eye. The other major thing about him was that he was donned in traditional ninja garb, and was even doing a classic ninjutsu hand gesture as he appeared. He had a blue face mask with yellow trim, along with a huge red scarf around his neck. He was also wearing a red shinobi shozuko under a blue robe, with white forearm sleeves standing out from his rather dark ensemble. He wore blue socks and yellow zori sandals on his feet, and on his shoulder was a gold oni mask, completing his look. Beneath his mask, Edgeshot couldn't help but smirk a bit. Sorry, couldn't resist. Edgeshot, seriously. Best Jeanist seethed as he brushed off his jacket. Must you always do that when we have these kinds of meetings? What can I say? It's surprisingly easy to do. Edgeshot shrugged. It was at that moment when he saw the teens staring at him slack-jawed, to which he waved over to them. Hello children. No need to explain yourselves, I overheard everything. It's Edgeshot. Izuku squeaked out. He was here the whole time. Kyoka exclaimed. Momo was left dumbfounded by the sudden arrival. That is amazing. Mei placed a hand to her chin and thought. Interesting. What kind of dampening device you think he uses to, wait, where'd he go? But then, Mei felt a tap on her shoulder and she let out a yelp, jumping around to see Edgeshot standing behind her. How did you? No secret tech here, miss. Edgeshot assured. I take my ninjutsu training very seriously, as you can see. So cool. Izuku, Kyoka and Momo all said at once with starry eyes. Hawks came up and put an arm around Edgeshot's shoulders. Surprised you were the last one to show up, Edgeshot. Usually you're pretty on time with these meetings. The ninja hero scratched his cheek and cleared his throat, appearing to be somewhat nervous. Yes, well, about that. I had to do a bit of convincing to have the guards let my teammates past security and… Wait, hold on, you did what? Fowler exclaimed. Edgeshot. Endeavor barked, making a few of the room's occupants flinch as he stormed up to the number 5 pro hero. What is the meaning of this? This was a meeting specifically for the top 10 heroes only. You can't just bring in heroes who aren't cleared. Without saying a word to Endeavor, Edgeshot turned and humbly bowed to Fowler. Forgive me, Agent Fowler, but I could not in good faith keep this a secret from my new teammates, especially since we plan on working very close together. He straightened up and his eye narrowed slightly at Endeavor. Asking me to withhold information from my agency is one thing, but my new teammates deserve to know whatever is going on if we are to trust one another in the field. Now listen here you. But before Endeavor could go on a tirade, Fowler stepped in. Hold on there, big man, Edgeshot makes a good point. The agent shifted his eyes around the room, moving them from All Might, to Izuku and then Kyoka, Mei and Momo. This secret is of the utmost importance, and while an entire agency knowing is out of the question, having this circle of trust extend to more pro heroes who are in a team with one of the top 10 might not be such a bad idea. Lord knows that after this past week, I want to make sure that everyone here is on the same level of trust, no matter what. Kyoka couldn't help but feel her eyebrows rise up in surprise. What do ya know? Fowler might actually be serious about this. Thank you, Agent Fowler. Edgeshot nodded. I appreciate you extending the circle of trust. Everyone heard Endeavor growl before turning away from the group again, no doubt wanting to let off some steam. No problem, Edge. Fowler waved. So, where are these teammates of yours anyway? Edgeshot raised a single finger into the air. Well, they should be arriving right about now. As if on cue, a pair of sliding doors opened and in came two heroes, who seemed to be bickering. "Would you put that away?" came an irritated male voice. "You know you're not supposed to have your phone out in this place." "Ah, come on Woods, don't be such a killjoy," a sweet if somewhat vain feminine voice responded. "Besides, I couldn't call anybody if I wanted to. No bars down here." The man let out a groan, which reverberated through his wooden helmet that covered his entire head. The only features of his that were visible were his eyes, which were currently narrowed at his compatriot. He also wore a navy blue bodysuit with a wooden belt, knee pads and shoes, and he had a bundle of roses secured to his belt as well. What was most notable about him, though, was that his arms right up to his shoulder seemed to be made out of wood. "Yui, I swear, you are incorrigible." The woman rolled her violet eyes at the man, flicking her long blonde hair in the process. Her hero costume consisted of a skin-tight bodysuit that was light tan with purple parts that had orange edging, namely around the torso, her gloves and her boots. She also wore a purple domino mask over her eyes, and there were a pair of purple bull-like horns on either side of her head, which were actually accessories. PSH, and what exactly is that supposed to mean, Shinji? "That you're hard to deal with," came Shinji's deadpan response. A rather cunning grin came to Yui's face. "Oh really? And here I thought you were the hard one. I mean, with all that wood, how can you not be?" Shinji's eyes widened under his mask to the size of bowling balls, and he was thankful that she couldn't see his cheeks at the moment. Was that a grr? Ha ha ha. "Oh Shinji, you're so easy to fluster," Yui said with a wave of her hand. The gathered group of heroes and students all looked at the scene with an awkward feeling, as if they had just jumped into a conversation partway through. All aside from one, thought. "Ah, it's Kamui Woods," Izuku cried out as his eyes snapped from the man to the woman. "An MT. Lady. They're two of the hottest new heroes on the scene." He whipped around and smiled to the number 5 pro hero. "Edgeshot, sir, are they really your team?" Yukio couldn't exactly feel the same enthusiasm that Izuku was feeling, though. "If they are, they aren't exactly what I expected. You formed a team, with a bunch of newbies," Endeavor bellowed, bringing everyone in the room to a sudden silence. Even Kamui and MT. Lady themselves were so stunned by the Flame Hero's shout that they shut up right then and there. "This is utterly ridiculous." "What do you mean?" Edgeshot asked as he gestured to the bickering heroes. "I mean, sure, off the clock they may act like this, but in the field, they're some of the best. These two have been making a big splash in their first year on the job. What's more, they've managed to do so with very little collateral damage, so there's another reason." He folded his arms and glowered at Endeavor. "I think you'll find that they're quite worthy to be here. Now if you'll excuse me." With that, Edgeshot went over to his two teammates, raising a brow to them. "Woods, MT. Lady, what exactly is going on here?" "Oh, well, Edgeshot, I was just teasing Shinji a little bit." Mount. Lady's smile returned and she gave a small wink. No harm done, right? Behind her, Woods could be seen facepalming at what she said. Edgeshot furrowed his brow to the young woman. "I would greatly prefer it if you addressed yourselves by your codenames in this facility, if you'd please. We may be off the streets, but this is still official hero business, understood?" "Of course, Edgeshot, we understand." Kamui gave a salute, and he elbowed MT. Lady in the side so that she'd do the same, begrudgingly. It was then, though, that Woods noticed the teenagers, and he was slightly taken aback. Wait, hold on a minute. If this is official business, then why are there children here?" Edgeshot finished. "Long story short, they got mixed up into this situation long before we were brought in, apparently. They're part of the reason why we're here." "Ooh, interesting, MT." Lady put a finger to her cheek as she went over to inspect the teens, giving them the once-over as she circled around them. "And if I'm not mistaken, these are students from UA, very interesting." Thanks," Kyoka uttered. Suddenly, though, MT. Lady's eyes brightened up at the sight of Momo, taking the raven-haired beauty off guard. "Oh my god, girlfriend, I can tell that you have what it takes to be a real pro, for sure." Really?" Momo muttered. "Oh, totally. Mount." Lady winked again, twirling her finger around as she pointed to her. Just wait until you graduate and then come and see me, I'll hook you up with something that'll blow the tops off of every, hey. Kamui stepped up and held an arm out in front of MT. Lady, all while making a bunch of branches grow from it to halt her. Mount. Lady, please, you're agitating them, making them nervous. The last thing they'd want or need right now is, wait, Woods' sights had gotten a quick glance at Izuku, and before the greenette knew it, the wooden hero was zeroed in directly on him. Haven't I seen you somewhere before? You seem awfully familiar. Izuku's mind went into overload, the quirk inheritor flashing back to the sludge villain incident that had happened almost a year ago. Back when he tried to save Bakugo from said sludge villain only for All Might to step in and help. That was the day he accepted the burden of becoming All Might's successor, and the day that Kamui Woods had chewed him out for pulling such a boneheaded move. There was only one thing to do in this situation, fib and hope he buys it. Ahaha. And no, I don't believe we have, actually. I mean, I've seen you in action plenty of times before, but I think we haven't personally met before today, hee. Kamui tapped his chin in thought as Izuku nervously sweat, only for the wooden hero to give a shrug. You're probably right. I think I must have just saved you at one point or another. Why yeah, that's it, hee. Izuku internally sighed in relief. That was way too close. He shook his head and went back to the number 5 pro. So Edgeshot, what exactly is your team called? Edgeshot raised his head proudly with a slight chuckle. I'm glad you asked, young man. We are, the ninja hero, along with Kamui and MT. Lady all formed up with one another back to back, striking dynamic poses as Edgeshot proclaimed their name, the Lurkers. There was yet another long silence throughout the room, with everyone staring at the trio with judging eyes. Well, that's an interesting team name. Kyoka finally piped up. I told you we should have workshopped it more. Mount. Lady grumbled. Ahem. The entire room all did an about face as Aizawa cleared his throat, the mummified homeroom teacher stepping back up to the forefront. If you don't mind, I think the time for chatter is over. It's finally time that we get to the real reason why we're all here, whatever it is. Principal Nezu moved up next to him, placing his hands behind his back as he addressed the crowd. Indeed, I believe that it's time that the motive for this important meeting be revealed. His beady eyes went over to Agent Fowler and he gave him a nod. Mr. Fowler, if you would be so kind. Of course, Nezu, sir. Fowler bowed to the talking mammal before focusing back onto his audience of teenagers and pro-heroes. Alright, I have no doubt that you're all eager to hear exactly why we've called you here. Follow me down to the loading bay, if you would. Within a few minutes, Agent Fowler had led the entire group. He ushered the group to follow him into a massive hangar, one with several military vehicles parked all around the place. There was also a large metal door on the far end of the room, one that resembled a giant garage door, and they were all walking up to it. As you're all probably aware, Sector 7 has several reasons to exist. Fowler said as he came to a halt in front of a large control panel. The primary of which in the modern day is to assist with the most secretive hero operations around the globe, the likes that which the public can't know about for their own safety. But, long before quirks came into existence, we were formed with an explicit goal, one that we continue to uphold even to this day. A laugh suddenly came from Hawks, the winged man chuckling as he was reminded of that fact. Yeah we know. The discovery and study of extraterrestrial lifeforms. The third-ranked pro scoffed a bit at the thought. PSH, like you've even found any. Mount. Lady couldn't help but deadpan at that. Aliens. Seriously. Is that what we're here about? I must admit, it does sound rather ridiculous. Kamui concurred. Yukio glanced over to the two. Oh really? Well, if you told someone over 300 years ago that almost the entire population of the planet would develop spectacular powers, do you think they would believe you? Mount. Lady and Kamui eyed one another with unsure expressions before Crust sent a soft glare at Hawks. And I wouldn't be so antagonistic about it, Hawks. The 6th-ranked pro advised. If quirks have proven one thing, it's that anything is possible. Hey, I'm just saying, you'd think they'd have found something alien-related by now. Hawks shrugged. Hey, funny you should say that, Hawks, Fowler smirked. The winged hero was taken off guard by Fowler's confidence. Wait, what? This past week, we've been dealing with what we can definitely describe as extraterrestrial activity. Agent Burns piped up, moving over toward Fowler along with Fairborn. Needless to say, we've experienced quite a lot, and we have the proof to show for it. Proof of aliens. Bah, how preposterous. Endeavor balked before spinning on his heel to head for the nearest door. This was a waste of my time. If you want to bother someone with such ridiculous crackpot ideas, then FWOOSH. In the blink of an eye, All Might had suddenly rushed right in front of Endeavor, the two's faces mere inches away from one another. Even with his characteristic smile, All Might spoke with utmost seriousness as he kept his arms spread apart. Endeavor, say what you will, but believe me, you will want to see this. I think your mind will be changed once you see what we have to show you. The flame hero felt his eye twitching, he was so irritated. It was one thing to deal with a bunch of upstarts and teenagers, but he knew that if he started a scene with All Might, the others would never let him live it down. He let out a sigh and crossed his arms, moving back to the Sector 7 agents once again. You have 30 seconds to convince me of this, prove that you have. We'll only need 20, thank you. Marissa said with a cheeky grin before nodding to Fowler. May I? Of course. Everyone, you'll want to stand back as the door opens. Fowler ushered everyone back and they did as he asked, all while Marissa finagled with the controls. It was at this moment when the anticipation almost became too much for Izuku, the young quirk inheritor jittering in place with excitement. I seriously can't believe this is happening. All of these pros, in on the big secret. Pretty unbelievable, I'll admit. Kyoka nodded just as the armored door began to go up, with a bunch of bright lights from the other room beginning to shine onto everyone. As the door went up, however, everyone saw that those bright lights actually belonged to 6 vehicles and a certain jet that were waiting for them on the other side. The students could see the pro heroes' eyes all widen at once as the engines kicked to life, and they all began to move toward them in AV pattern, almost like a flock of birds. Ooh, here they come. Kyoka grinned. Wait, are those? Edgeshot narrowed his eyes to make sure that he was seeing things correctly. Are those vehicles driving themselves? Gang Orca's eyes widened even further, taking note of the several different models of vehicles before them. I believe they are. And I don't think any of them are certified self-driving cars. Oh, plus, ya know, one of them's a freaking jet. Hawks exclaimed as the VTOL jet in question flew right into circle over their heads. How is any of this possible? Fowler chuckled a little at that. HM, you'll see, Hawks. You'll see. That way, Prime. The agent moved his arm to the left and the semi-truck followed his instructions, honking its horn as all of the other cars fell in line. Before long, the entire group of heroes and teenagers began to find themselves being surrounded by the vehicles, the semi-truck leading the yellow Volkswagen Beetle, the pink Lotus Elise, the green Hummer H2 pickup, the white racing Porsche, and the Nissan Patrol rescue vehicle all around them. The jet also came in for a landing and, before long, the humans were in the center of a huge circle, with the semi-truck approaching them from the very front. Hold on to your butts, heroes. Fowler advised. Because this is gonna rock your world. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. In the blink of an eye, and much to the hero's shock, the vehicles began to change shape, witnessing as they all converted into more humanoid, or rather, robotic forms. The semi took the shape of a rather dynamic, broad-shouldered bot with a faceplate, his color scheme being what they could only describe as patriotic. The yellow Beetle transformed into the smallest bot of the bunch, a rather friendly-looking one at that with small horns and a mouthguard. The Hummer's robot form was a big-chinned individual, his form large and rotund. The Porsche actually did some sort of breakdance when he transformed, and his blue visor only added to his cool factor. The Nissan Patrol had changed into a rather tall and slim robot, one whose red visor was slightly intimidating. And finally, the Elise and the Jet transformed into 2 feminine robots, a pink one with a rounded white helmet and a red and black one with a kabuki-like face. By the end of their transformations, Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, RC, Jazz, Bulkhead, Red Alert and Strongarm were all staring down at the rather stunned group of heroes, with only the teens, the Sector 7 agents, All Might, and Nezu being unaffected by the sight of them. The others, well, to say that they were astonished was an understatement. Izuku was pretty sure he could hear a few bandages start to rip after Aizawa's jaw dropped. And Kyoka could only describe the expression on Endeavor's face as priceless. She made sure to snap a pic just for posterity's sake. What in the world? Edgeshot managed to mutter out. This can't be. Kamui took a step back, craning his head all the way up to meet Optimus' optics. These are giant robots. Mount. Lady finished. Fowler jerked a thumb up to the red, white and blue bot before them. Not just any robots, newbies. Giant alien robots. He eyed Endeavor with a smirk. Told ya so. It was at that moment that Optimus Prime took a mighty step forward, startling the heroes a bit as he came crouching forward. The big bot lowered his face until he was eye to eye with most of the heroes, getting himself as close as he possibly could. He scanned his eyes across the crowd of shocked heroes, until he noticed Nezu, whose smile had not disappeared since entering the room. You do not seem afraid, small one. Optimus said in his powerful yet kind voice, taking everyone else aback. Are you not surprised to see us? A part of me certainly is, yes. Nezu admitted. However, it helps that someone had already confided into me about you and your race. He craned his head around to Bumblebee, giving him a wave. It's good to see you again, Bumblebee. How has life been treating you? Bumblebee brightened up at the sight of the talking mammal and saluted to him. ZRTK, it goes well, ZRTK, Nezu, ZRKT, sir. This time, however, it was the teen's turn to be shocked. Wait, hold up. Kyoka raised a brow down to the principal, along with the others. Principal Nezu, you already know Bumblebee. Aizawa set his sights down to the principal in shock. Nezu, sir, is this true? Indeed. Nezu nodded up to the young girl and his coworker. All Might introduced me to him on the day of the entrance exams. But I must say, it's quite exhilarating to get to meet all of these robot lifeforms as well. Quite splendid, indeed. At that, the teens all gave All Might the stink eye, the number one pro shrinking back a little sheepishly. And we weren't informed of this, why? Momo pressed. Ah, ha ha ha, why, I just wanted it to be a surprise. All Might explained with a dramatic pose. One that would be saved for this very moment. And believe me, it seems you all are. He could tell just by their expressions that they weren't buying what he was selling, so he slumped forward and waved his hand in defeat. Alright, I may have forgotten to tell you, but hey, better late than never, right? The group of teens facepalmed at the revelation, but resigned themselves to the fact nonetheless. Ah well, at least now we know. May shrugged. Endeavor furrowed his brow and snapped his head around to his arch-rival. All Might, just how long have you known about this? Almost half a year now. All Might answered as he gestured toward Bumblebee. Ever since we found this one buried in a trash heap on Dagoba Beach. Needless to say, things have gotten far more interesting since then. And that's putting it mildly. Fowler emphasized. We almost were on the receiving end of a full-scale invasion from enemy forces. He gestured up to Optimus with a nod. But, thanks to these guys showing up in the nick of time, we managed to put a stop to that. He glanced up to the Autobot leader, nudging his head toward the crowd of still flabbergasted heroes. Why don't you introduce yourselves, Prime? Maybe get these people up to date. Optimus nodded back to him assuredly. Of course, Agent Fowler. His optics went back to the heroes and he bowed his head to them in respect. Greetings, heroes of Earth. My name is Optimus Prime, and we are autonomous robotic organisms from the planet Cybertron. Windblade cleared her throat and added, but you can call us, Autobots, for short. Autobots, Yukio murmured, taking note of the vast differences between each and every Autobot there. I see, so you're living, breathing robotic lifeforms that have concepts of thinking, feeling and even having gender identity. Precisely. Red Alert nodded, though minus the breathing part. Our species does not require air to survive. RC raised a finger to make a point. Thought we do have air intakes, though I don't suppose that counts. Optimus stood back up to his full height, moving his hand out to his Autobots. Allow me to introduce my team. He gestured to his trusted lieutenant to start things off. This is my first lieutenant, designation, Jazz. At that moment, Jazz strolled up and nudged his chin toward the humans. What's crackin' little humans? After performing an impressive backflip, Jazz landed in a crouch and took a quick glance around, taking note of the damaged military Humvee behind him. This looks like a cool place to kick it. Following an impressive breakdancing move, Jazz launched himself back and sat right on the wrecked Humvee, crossing his arms as he lounged back. Hey, we needed to fix that. Agent Burns exclaimed. Wait, how did you learn to talk like that? Best Jeanist questioned, recognizing the Jive dialect. Well, like Earth, Cybertron has several different dialects. Optimus explained. As you can imagine, though, many of them would be unintelligible to humans. So, after analyzing and learning Earth's eclectic dialects through the World Wide Web, we have applied them to translate our own way of speaking. So basically, the way I'm speaking to ya now is how a Cybertronian would be hearing me speak normally. Jazz added. That's incredible. Crust muttered. These Autobots are capable of doing what humans take several years to accomplish. Simply astounding. He turned around and saw Bulkhead directly behind him, so he offered a smile to the big green bot. And what about you, my large friend? Bulkhead was slightly surprised by Crust using the term, friend, so quickly, but he knew that had to be a good thing, so he rolled with it. Oh, the name's Bulkhead. I'm the Autobots demolition and construction expert. I see. A pleasure to meet you, Bulkhead. Crust said as he offered his hand. The name's Crust, by the way. Welcome to Earth. If the man's friendliness was one thing, then this sudden welcome was another. But nonetheless, Bulkhead extended a finger down to shake Crust's hand. Hey, the pleasure's all mine, Crust. Nice to meet you too. Hawks and Best Jeanist came up to Red Alert, the former grinning up to him. And, what about you, Cyclops? What's your designation? I could do without the nicknames for one thing. Red Alert responded irritably, taking the two humans off guard. And as for my real designation, I am Red Alert, Chief Security Officer of the Autobots as well as Technician and Field Medic. Ah, a bot of many hats, it would seem. Best Jeanist deduced. Beneath his visor, Red narrowed his optics in confusion. What is a hat? Hawks wore an amused smirk as he gestured to his head. Hey, it's something that you wear on your head, stiff. But in this case, he's saying that you do a lot of jobs on this team. I see. Red Alert nodded. Well, it's a necessity to do so, especially since we're short on scientists, medics and engineers at the moment. An admirable position to be in, I'm sure. Best Jeanist affirmed. You must be a master of your craft, then. At that moment, much to the teen's surprise, Red Alert actually cracked a small grin down to the fiber hero. Thank you. Though I will admit that there are several bots in my field who are far better than I, but to hear such a rare compliment is always nice to hear. Izuku and Kyoka eyed one another, shocked at how the conversation had went. Wow, and I thought for sure Red wouldn't want anything to do with these guys. Izuku whispered. MPH, maybe he just has a problem with kids. Kyoka grumbled. It was then that Yukio smiled up to RC and Windblade, the 9th-ranked pro approaching the two fembots. And what about you two ladies? What are your names? RC brightened up and placed a hand on her chest to introduce herself. Oh, my name is RC, Autobot Intelligence Officer. It's nice to meet you, miss. My hero name is Yukio. The Dragoon hero said as she offered her hand. But if you wish, you might call me by my real name, Ryako. Windblade lowered herself down and extended her pointer finger to the Dragoon hero. It's a pleasure, Ryako. I'm Windblade, the Autobots' resident city speaker. It's an honor to welcome you to Earth. Ryuku smiled as she accepted the handshake, doing the same with RC soon after. Though if I may ask, what exactly is a city speaker? A sheepish expression etched onto Windblade's features, the femme scratching her cheek as she thought about the best way to describe an answer to the woman. It's complicated, to say the very least. Let's just say that I can translate the thoughts and feelings of bigger bots than even us. Mount. Lady's eyes couldn't help but widen when she heard that. You mean you guys come in bigger sizes? Izuku and the girls couldn't help but be shocked at the revelation, too. Well, that's news to us. It is indeed possible, Optimus confirmed, though Titans are certainly very rare to see on Cybertron these days. The Autobot commander's optics went to Windblade, who stood at attention. Most Titans on Cybertron have been dormant for quite a long time, and as such, we have not had a need for city speakers recently. However, it is good to have one if the need arises. Edgeshot crossed his arms, trying to picture what an even bigger version of these robots would look like. A Titan-sized alien robot, it's almost like something out of a mid-1900s science fiction movie. Only we're living it. Kamui Woods jumped in, and I must say, it's quite awesome. He craned his head over to Bumblebee, extending his hand to the smallest Autobot. And what about you? What's your name, visitor? A buzzing noise came from Bee's throat before he switched on his radio, speaking through it while striking dynamic poses. ZRKT, and in this corner, weighing in, ZRKT, at over 3,000 pounds, ZRKT, the amazing Bumblebee. Bumblebee pointed his thumbs to his chest in an over-the-top manner, making the kids all laugh at his dramatic posing. Bumblebee, huh, mount. Lady put a hand to her chin at that. Not exactly what you'd expect a robot to be called. Well, that's because me and Muscles here were actually the ones that named him. May jumped in while pulling Izuku in with her arm, taking him off guard. When we first found him, he couldn't speak, and the only noise he could make sounded like a bumblebee, so we decided to name him that. I had helped that his name before that wasn't exactly a name, per se. Izuku added, trying to release himself from May's strong grip. B-127 doesn't exactly roll off the tongue well. Mount. Lady tilted her head to the yellow bot. And he only speaks from his radio. Before any of the teens could answer, Red Alert suddenly lifted his laser tool arm and fired a thin red beam at Bumblebee's throat, making the smaller bot cough a little. His vocal processors were damaged in battle. He stopped the laser and brought up a small holographic display on his arm, showing an analysis of the scan he just ran. I'm still working on them, though unfortunately, there's not much left to salvage. Ah, that's so sad. Mount. Lady sent a sympathetic expression up to Bumblebee and gave him a pat on his foot. It must suck not being able to speak. I know I probably wouldn't be able to stand not speaking at all. Woods couldn't help but rub the side of his temple a little. Meanwhile, some of us would appreciate a little quiet time, Ack. Before he knew it, the wooden hero was put into a headlock by the Mainyama hero, who was glaring at him with an intimidating stare. I'm sorry, Kamui, what was that? Alright, enough. Aizawa barked out before a sigh escaped his lips, putting his still good hand up to his forehead. Okay, so we have 7 alien robots here on Earth, ones that can transform into any type of vehicle they want. As I can imagine, that's a pretty big deal. Actually, that's 10 of us. Windblade corrected, which the heroes weren't prepared for. We have 3 more operatives on Earth who are currently on a search mission. Endeavor furrowed his brow up at her. A search mission. Searching for what, exactly? The flame hero pointed an accusing finger over to Optimus. In fact, what exactly are you all doing here in the first place? What business do you Autobots have on our planet? And why the disguises for that matter? The Autobots all moved their optics to their commander, who hummed a sigh of his own before stepping forward. I suppose it is a good time to get to that topic. To put it directly, we are here for 2 reasons. The first and most primary of which, is this: Optimus brought his arm up and it opened up to reveal a hologram projector, which began to project an image of a rather large spaceship with 4 big thrusters at the back. This is the Ark. It is an Autobot vessel that went missing centuries ago, and its signal was lost near this planet. As such, we believe that it crash-landed here. I see, Aizawa understood. So you're here to find your ship, wherever it is. Correct. There are many friends aboard that ship, and we intend to rescue them while carrying out the Ark's mission. Optimus touched the holo projector and the Ark image disappeared, only to be replaced with one of a crystal shard. Which brings me to the second reason why we're here. The Ark's mission was to seek out an element known as Energon, the very lifeblood of our race. We Cybertronians use this element for everything on our planet, and unfortunately, it has been nearly completely drained from the planet itself. Really? Gang Orca sent a questioning gaze up to Optimus. And why is that? The Prime let out a heavy sigh, all while the other Autobots, All Might, the Sector 7 agents, and the teenagers gathered up. That is a long and very harrowing story. Over the course of the next half hour, the Autobots explained everything about the war with the Decepticons to the assembled pro-heroes, with All Might and the teenagers jumping in near the end to inform them about the events that led to the Autobots' arrival to Earth. By the end, every hero assembled were left speechless by the story, and it was then that Optimus decided to wrap things up. So, now you know. Our presence on your planet is due to an eons-long war that has lasted right up to this very day, and the Ark's mission, which is our mission, was to find an energon-rich world so that we may have some hope of winning this conflict with the Decepticons, and perhaps even restoring our planet to its former thriving state. Prime craned his head down, a feeling of guilt beginning to take hold of him. And it is with a heavy spark that I must apologize to you all. Apologize? Nezu asked. Whatever for? You've done nothing wrong by us, Optimus Prime. He's talking about potentially leading the Decepticons right to our planet. Endeavor bellowed as his flames began to grow more intense, his glare locked firmly on the Autobot leader as he pointed at him once again. You know that there's a strong chance that they will find this planet sooner or later, even though you did stop those first two from signaling their allies. And what's worse is that you pulled children into this war of yours. His lips curled up into a snarl. You've only delayed the inevitable. Endeavor. All Might firmly put his hand on Endeavor's shoulder and spun him around, getting upright in his face, and his smile was gone. I will make this as perfectly clear as possible so that you do not mistake me. If you continue to admonish Optimus for something that isn't even his fault, you and I will exchange much more than some nasty words. Endeavor grit his teeth in response. Is that a threat, All Might? Because I welcome the challenge. All Might clenched his fist. More so a promise. I will not have you blame Optimus for this when it's the fault of absolutely no one. He's right. Hawks stepped up, along with Best Jeanist, Edgeshot and his team, Crust, Yukio and Gang Orca right behind him. Besides, now's really not the time to be arguing amongst ourselves when there's more important stuff to worry about. Aizawa came up as well. Exactly. Right now, we've got to implement plans of defense for if or when the Decepticons do actually show up. He craned his head up to Optimus and the other Autobots. Because I imagine that this is something that the general public cannot know about. Correct, Optimus affirmed. If our existence were to go public, there would be mass hysteria at the revelation of alien robotic lifeforms among you. Hence why we have taken on the guise of Earth vehicles, to hide in plain sight. However, that will not be enough to counter the Decepticon threat. Red Alert jumped in. They will see through our disguises and potentially try to even attack us out in the open where humans can see us. It's imperative that we keep the Decepticons away from your populated areas, all while not revealing ourselves. Bulkhead decided to make another point. Plus the cons will likely have Viacon drones with them to make up their numbers. They're essentially lifeless foot soldiers, but in massive battalions, they could be trouble. He craned his head down to Crust. So if we get outnumbered and any of you happen to be around, would you be willing to lend a hand? Crust extended a hand up to Bulkhead with aplomb. Of course, my friend. We'd be happy to assist whenever we're needed. Yukio smiled as well. No questions asked. After all, this is our planet, so it's only right that we help defend it if the Decepticons decide to come knocking. You can count on the lurkers to be by your side all the way. Edgeshot promised as he bowed to the Autobots, with Kamui Woods giving a salute while MT. Lady flashed a thumbs up. This, we vow. I can tell that there's much work to be done. Gang Orca said as he put a hand to his chest. But you can definitely count on my help in this matter. He trailed off as he set his sights over to the students. But, what about the children? For as rude as Endeavor was, he still has a point. A battlefield like this is no place for first-year students. Izuku and Kyoka were about to make an argument, but All Might came in and put a hand on his protege's shoulder. Need I remind you, gang, that these are the same children who made a rocket launcher out of spare parts and took a Khan's arm off with it. He craned his head down to Izuku with his bright smile having returned. And what's more, young Midoriya here was the one to deal the finishing blow to Shatter. You have to give these kids some credit, they're very capable of handling themselves, just like the rest of their class. Haha, alright, Kyoka cheered, with Momo and Mei voicing their approval as well. Thanks for the support, All Might. Why yeah, that means a ton. Izuku grinned. Just then, Nezu re-entered the conversation. That all may be true, and believe me, I am very impressed by the ingenuity exhibited by these young students. He put up a single finger and pointed to them. However, I still believe it would be prudent to have some form of protection for them against the Decepticons should they show up. His beady eyes went over to Prime once more. Perhaps a guardian for each of them. Just to be sure that they remain safe. Prime put a hand to his chin in thought. Not a bad idea, Mr. Nezu. I'll see to it that this is done immediately. Although, Optimus reached down and placed a hand on Bumblebee and RC's shoulders. I don't believe I'll have to look far for these guardians. RC and Bumblebee immediately saluted to their leader. It would be an honor to be official guardians for the humans, Optimus Prime, sir. The pink femme said, with Bumblebee buzzing in approval as well. Very good, thank you both. Optimus said before his optics found Endeavor once again, the flame hero still glaring at him. Endeavor, I do not blame you for your feelings on this matter. Believe me, I do feel awful about the possibility of the Decepticons arriving. However, as Autobot leader, it will be my responsibility to make sure that your planet remains safe. This world must not befall the same fate as Cybertron, and I intend to make sure that it doesn't. There was a long silence that followed before Endeavor scoffed and turned around, making his way toward the door. Very well, Prime. If you wish to shoulder the responsibility of Earth's safety on your shoulders, that's your choice to make. And yes, I will actively defend this planet from the Decepticons. He stopped just as the doors opened for him to glance over his shoulder back at Prime. But just remember, if something goes wrong, it'll be on your head. And with that, Endeavor stepped through the door, which promptly closed behind him. Momo sneered in the man's direction and crossed her arms. HMPH, are we sure he's deserving of that number 2 spot? He's a real jerkface. May balked. Even more than that Bakugo guy you all keep talking about. I wouldn't go that far, but he is pretty close. Kyoka admitted. It was then that Aizawa came up to the group of 14s, and while his bandages covered most of his features, they could tell that he was being quite serious at the moment. All that aside, I want to make something perfectly clear. Just because we're all in on this big secret, that doesn't give you any excuses when it comes to class. He pointed a stern finger at all of them and the teens stood rigid at attention. I expect you all to keep your grades up no matter what happens with the Autobots, is that understood? Why yes, Mr. Aizawa, we understand. Izuku stammered. We'll make sure to keep studying and training to be the best heroes we can be, sir. HMPH, good. Now, if all this is settled, Aizawa spun around on his heel and marched straight for the door. I'm gonna go back home and get to bed. I've got papers to grade tomorrow. The teens couldn't help but face fault at Aizawa's prompt exit. I should depart as well. Nezu agreed as he too began walking with Aizawa. There's still much work to be done at school. He waved one last time to the students. I look forward to seeing you all on Monday. Then, he eyed Optimus once again, too. And I anticipate our next meeting, Optimus Prime. Optimus bowed to the talking mammal as he left. Until we meet again, Nezu, sir. Kamui nodded in agreement. Yes, we should probably leave as well. Crime doesn't stop itself, you know. Mount. Lady sent a salute up to the Autobots as she and the lurkers took their leave. It was nice meeting you all. Can't wait to work with ya. Same here. Windblade returned with a salute of her own. Take care, everyone. Take care, indeed. Edgeshot bowed one last time before using his quirk to become thin once more. Until we meet again, Autobots. With that, he and his team slinked out the nearest door, following after Aizawa and Nezu. And before long, Hawks, Best Jeanist, Gang Orca and Crust had all said their goodbyes as well, leaving Yukio to be the final one to depart. I must say, when I woke up this morning, this was definitely on the list of least expected things to see today. The Dragoon hero admitted, scanning her eyes across the Autobots one last time. And I certainly can't wait to work with you more in the future. Her focus then shifted down to Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo. And that goes for all of you. I can tell that you kids have quite the future ahead of you if you were able to fend off a group of villains and 2 evil alien robots in the same week. All of the teens couldn't help but blush at the comment. Shucks, thank you, Miss Ryaku. Izuku bowed. Yeah, that really means a lot coming from you. Kyoka and the girls bowed as well. I hope we meet again soon. As do I. Beep beep beep. Oh, excuse me, I have to take this. Yukio reached up to her ear, activating a small communicator within it. Go ahead." After a few moments, the blonde woman's eyes widened slightly as her full attention was now on what was being told to her. "What? You're serious? All right, I'll be there as soon as I can. I'll see you there." She hung up and set her attention back to the group. "My apologies, but that was one of my protégés and she's told me there's been an accident. I have to go." "Of course, Yukio." All Might saluted. "After all, a hero's work is never done. Best of luck." "Thank you, All Might, and farewell, everyone." Once everyone said their goodbyes, Yukio shifted her gaze over to Fowler with a knowing look. "Bill, would you so kindly open the express exit for me?" Fowler smirked as he pulled a remote out of his pocket. "Why, of course. Good luck with the case." He pressed the button and, before anyone knew it, a large hole opened up in the ceiling, leading to an entry tunnel that seemed to be used primarily for aircraft. Yukio's eyes began to shine bright yellow as she craned her head up toward the hole. Excellent, and then, much to the Autobot's surprise, Yukio let out a mighty roar before her whole body began to shift in shape and size, becoming much larger and more reptilian. Her hair became much longer and spiky while her arms and legs became gray and scaly, with a long tail and a pair of massive wings emerged from her back. Her fingers and toes all now ended in a massive, black claw, and her neck grew out along with her head shifting into a more beak-shaped form. Her teeth had also become sharper as well, which finished off her dragon transformation. And she was now the size of Optimus Prime himself. The Autobot commander couldn't help but stare in shock as the draconic Yukio came right up to him and offered her claw. "Until we meet again, Optimus Prime." Prime was finally able to blink and he returned the handshake, giving her a nod. "Likewise, Miss Yukio." With that, the Dragoon hero spread her wings and took off, flying right up toward the ceiling and into the hole that would lead her out of the base. A long silence followed before Windblade spoke her mind. "Well, that was crazy." "Hey, crazy amazing, if that's what you mean," Bulkhead remarked. "The variety of Korriks on this planet is truly fascinating." Red Alert put a finger to his chin, pondering what he just saw. "I'm definitely going to have to study these more." Blip blip. Blip blip. The Autobots were brought out of their stunned state when all of their comm links began to sound off, leading Optimus to bring his hand up and answer his. And when he did, he was greeted immediately by Sideswipe's voice. "Away team to Optimus Prime, come in Prime." The warrior called out with a happy tone. "This is Prime here," Optimus answered. "Go ahead, Sideswipe." "Huh, Optimus, you are gonna love what we've got for you." Sideswipe continued. "We came across this little hidden abandoned mine off a backroad near a town called Nagano, and hoo boy, we just found a small stockpile of energon." Needless to say, all of the Autobots were at full attention now. "What? No way!" Jazz exclaimed. "You guys serious?" Yes way," Sunstreaker piped up through the comms. "Don't believe us? Get your skid plates over here and check it out." It was then that Strongarm also came in through the communicators as well. "Hey, don't be so crude, but yes, you all must come here right now. It may be a small amount, but we could still use some help mining it out." Having overheard the conversation, Izuku raised his hand. "Hey, Nagano isn't far from here. We can make it there in just a few minutes." Beneath his faceplate, Optimus Prime smiled at the news. "Well then, I think we all know what this calls for." The red and blue bot raised his arm up, his hand balled into a fist as he gave the order, "Autobots, transform and roll out." All of the Autobots cheered in approval before transforming into their vehicle modes, with All Might climbing into Prime's cab while the students took their respective places with Bumblebee and RC. Meanwhile, Fowler, Burns and Fairborn all climbed into Bulkhead, and with that, the team all made a break for the hangar doors, ready to mine the coveted energon. Chapter 4, New Challenges. It had been about a day or so since the big meeting went down between the Autobots and Japan's most well-known heroes, and before the teens knew it, Monday had set upon them once more. Starting today, they had 2 full weeks until the sports festival, so if there was one thing they were going to start doing, it was train and train hard. Heck, they had already done a bit with the Autobots the day before, well, sort of. Most of the day was taken up by the Autobots trying to make sure that the ground bridge worked correctly, so the training was minimal on that day. However, Izuku and the girls did at least get a good run in up and down the coastline with Bumblebee coaching them on, so it was something. Optimus had promised them that the real training would begin the moment they got back from school this afternoon, so they were ready and waiting to see what they had in store for them. The anticipation was practically eating at them all day, and the moment the final bell rang, they all eagerly stood up from their seats along with the rest of their class. Alright, it's finally time. Izuku shouldered his backpack and looked behind him to Kyoka. You ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be for auto boot camp. Kyoka quipped, making both of them chuckle. So, what do you think we're in for? I honestly don't know. Izuku shook his head. Though considering that our new trainers have literally been through war zones, I can't imagine it'll be easy. But before the conversation could go on, Ochako suddenly popped up next to the two. What won't be easy, Midoriya? Gah-ha. The greenette jumped out of his skin and took to Kyoka's side immediately. Uraraka, please don't do that. Ochako's smile fell and her gaze became apologetic. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, really. Just then, though, Tenya got up as well and entered the conversation. You seem rather jumpy lately, though, Midoriya. Is something the matter? He placed a hand to his chest with a dutiful lift of his head. After all, as your friends, we are here to help you with anything, just say the word. As much as his spectacled friend's overexuberance was a bit much for Izuku, he couldn't lie, he was touched by the kind act. Hee, wow, thanks Iida, but really, I'm good. You don't have to worry about me, I'm just still jittery about the sports festival, that's all. As we all are, I'm sure. Tenya affirmed. But worry not, I'm sure that you will do fantastically, as will you, Jiro. Hey, thanks Slim. Kyoka quipped back before seeing Momo approach out of the corner of her eye. The two shared a nod before going back to Ochako and Tenya. So, you guys need another ride to the station. I'm sure Brian and Sadie would be glad to take ya. That would be very nice, actually. Tenya affirmed with a raise of his hand. Ochako nodded in approval with a little laugh. Haha, yeah, beats walking every day, easily. Well, what are we waiting for, then? Momo took the lead and went straight to the door, the others following close behind. She reached for the handle and began to slide it open, they should be down there by now, so, However, the raven-haired beauty let out a gasp the moment the door opened, and was instantly met by the faces of dozens upon dozens of other students all peering into the classroom. What in the world? The rest of the group as well as the other 1A students were all just as flabbergasted as her, with Ochako voicing all of their thoughts. Why the heck are you all here? Do you have some business in our class? Tenya declared with a stiff hand raised. It was at that moment that Keita came up as well, the Dino Parts user furrowing her brow toward the spying students. Okay, what's the deal with blocking the way? Are ya holding us hostage or something? They're scouting the competition, lizard lips. That comment made Keita sneer as she spun around to glare at Katsuki Bakugo, the ashen blonde sauntering up with his usual uncaring grimace. The hell are you on about now, Baku breath? Katsuki sent her a brief glance and huffed. Isn't it obvious? They wanna see what we're all about before the sports festival. We are the class that survived a real villain attack, ya know. He continued toward the crowd of students with his glare returning, and Kyoka couldn't help but pinch the bridge of her nose. Oh boy, here we go. Let's just hope he doesn't blow someone up, Izuku noted. Katsuki stopped as he stepped out the door, sending his unimpressed gaze across the student body. At least now you know what a future pro looks like. He grit his teeth to them and snapped, now move it, extras. Needless to say, his fellow classmates didn't take too well to that. You can't just walk around calling people extras, just because you don't know who they are. Tenya chastised with his stiff chopping movements. So, this is Class 1A. The students' panic was subsided when a new voice entered the conversation, one that was coming from the crowd itself. Shuffling out from the dozens of students came a rather tall and skinny individual with wild purple hair and dark, tired eyes, ones that reminded them a lot of their homeroom teachers. This was likely a coincidence since they had a feeling Aizawa wasn't one for raising children with his sort of job. He focused on Bakugo as he continued. I heard you guys were impressive, but you just sound like an ass. Say what? Katsuki said through his teeth. You heard me. The boy said as he rubbed the back of his head. Is everyone in the hero course delusional or just you? Believe me, it's just him. Keita pushed back the irritated Bakugo with an apologetic grin. Anyway, I think we all got off on the wrong foot. I'm Keita Kiryu, what's your name? The boy raised a brow to her, slightly impressed by her decorum. Hitoshi Shinso. And I guess it's good to know at least this class isn't full of egomaniacs. He paused for a moment and raised his head up to the 1A students. Truth is, I wanted to be in the hero course, but like many others, I was forced to choose a different path when I didn't make the cut for it. Keita and many others felt their eyes widen at the revelation. Oh, well I'm sorry, but I have another chance. Shinso continued, taking the students by surprise. If any of us in the remedial courses do well in the sports festival, the teachers can decide to transfer us up to the hero course, and they'll have to transfer people out to make room. If anything, this shocked the 1A students even more. Kyoka leaned over and whispered to Izuku, think that's true? Or is Shinso just saying it to mess with our heads? I honestly have no idea. Izuku shrugged. This is the first I've heard of it. Scouting the competition, Shinso went on. Maybe my peers are, but I'm here to let you know that if you don't bring your very best, I'll steal your spot right from under you. He furrowed his brow with his final words, consider this a declaration of war. With that statement now firmly in their minds, Izuku and his friends could only think one thing, where'd this guy even come from? Bakugo simply grumbled and pushed past Keita, only to be met with an angry-looking guy with messy silver hair, sharp teeth, and very big, tan-colored eyelashes that didn't seem to be made out of hair, but a very thick, coarser material. Hey you, I'm from Class 1B next door to you. He shouted with a raised fist. We heard you fought some villains and I came to see if it was true. But you're just a brat who thinks he's better than us. He pointed straight at Bakugo in ire and belted out. You can talk a big game, but that's just gonna make it all the more embarrassing when I knock you the hell out. Hey, he's got ya there, Baku breath. Keita quipped as Katsuki simply growled a response, not even paying attention to the silver-haired kid. The Dino Parts user grit her teeth and called after him. Hey, where the hell do you think you're going? Don't you ignore me. The silver-haired boy snapped from behind the wall of students. It was at that point that Eijiro came running up to the door to try and get Bakugo to stop as well. Dude, wait, you gotta say something. It's your fault that they're hating on us, Bakugo. These people don't matter. Katsuki simply put, not even bothering to glance back. The only thing that's important, is that I beat them. And with that, the explosive blonde walked away, leaving everyone in a stunned state of silence. All except Eijiro himself, who couldn't help but shed a single tear and clench his fist. I hate that was just a manly exit. Dude, seriously. Keita deadpanned to the spiky redhead. The guy made us #1 on everyone's hit list and that's what you have to say. Back with Izuku's group, however, they couldn't help but stay silent, letting everything that just happened sink in with them. Izuku in particular was stunned that Katsuki didn't let loose with his anger at all. Sure, he was still rude, but it made him all the more curious as to what was going on in the ashen blonde's head. Kachan, what's going on with you? Ochako let out a sigh as she and her friends finally made it outside of the school, all of them thankful to be out after that scene in the classroom. Man, that was super scary. The brunette wiped her brow. I honestly thought we were gonna have some sort of fight going on in there with all that. Oh, I doubt it would have come to that. Tenya assured with a wave. After all, the school has clear guidelines and punishments if a fight broke out, so I don't think anyone would risk that before the sports festival. Still, it's pretty intimidating to think about. Momo put a finger to her chin in thought. The idea that any one of us could be transferred out of the hero course if the teachers end up finding someone who's more deserving, it sticks in your head. Kyoka twirled one of her jacks around her finger, her mind also thinking about what Shinso had said. Yeah, pretty crazy. Still, we don't even know if it's true or not, so let's not jump to conclusions. She glanced to her right to see Izuku, the greenette's head craned down, his features etched in concentration. Kyoka promptly elbowed him in the side to get his attention. Yo, Earth to Mop Top, you there? Oh, sorry, Kyoka. Izuku apologized with a bow. It's just, I was thinking about all of that and got lost in my thoughts. The perplete narrowed her eyes in suspicion. Really? Because usually you only concentrate that hard when something's really bugging you out. She tilted her head to him with a small grin. You know you can share anything with me, right? Izuku reciprocated the smile immediately. Oh, of course, I do. It's just, well, his expression faltered nervously. You probably won't like what it's about. Bakugo. Kyoka sighed, and seeing Izuku cringe a bit only confirmed her fears. Izuku, I thought we both agreed that you'd try and keep him out of your head going forward. I mean, yeah, it's hard considering he's in our class, but it's honestly better for you. I know. Izuku craned his head down, trying to explain himself as best he could. It's just, the way he handled things back there, I wouldn't exactly describe it the way Kirishima did, but, something's changed in him. He glanced up to Kyoka, and thankfully, she was listening intently on what he had to say. It's like, after we had our first training session, plus the whole attack on the USJ, he's been a bit less bombastic. He still gets angry, yes, but when it comes to confronting others, he seems a lot more collected. I mean, he's still a jerk, but he didn't flip out on Shinso at all in that whole conversation. The old Kachan would have eviscerated him. Kyoka pursed her lips at that. As much as she hated to admit it, Izuku had a point. Yeah, okay, that is a bit weird. But in the end, she gave a shrug. Maybe the whole villain attack affected him more than we thought it would. Maybe, but I have a strong feeling that there's something else going on with him. Izuku rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I'm just not too sure what it is. Well, whatever the case may be, I still wouldn't think too much about it. Kyoka pulled an arm across the boy's shoulders, taking him by surprise as she pointed to her head. Remember, in the end, he's a leech on your mental health that you've gotta pull off. She prodded his chest firmly with her finger to emphasize her point. You worry about yourself and how you're gonna prepare for the sports festival, okay. A sigh escaped Izuku's throat before smiling to Kyoka once more. How is it that you always make a strong point and back it up with such a strong argument? It's a gift and I'm stubborn like that. Kyoka winked, causing both of them to laugh. In front of them, though, Ochako, Tenya and Momo couldn't help but overhear some of the conversation, and the brunette glanced over to the rich girl with a raised brow. You're certain that those two aren't a couple? She whispered. Because they sure act like one and it's cute as heck. Momo smirked and glanced back to the duo. Trust me, I'm working on it. Just as they were about to make it through the front gate, though, they heard a loud whistle come from behind them, followed by a certain inventor's voice. Hello everyone, May practically sang as she rushed up from behind, holding her experimental boots in her arms. Glad to see you all made it right on time. She nodded over to Tenya and Ochako as well. Specs, Rosie, how's it going? The duo couldn't help but deadpan at the nicknames, with Ochako self-consciously putting her hands over her cheeks. Tenya cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. Ahem, Miss Hatsume, good to see you again as well. Especially since you've chosen to not ram into anyone with your rocket boots this time. May wagged her finger at Tenya with a smirk. Not rocket boots anymore. Behold. She lifted up the boots to reveal that in place of the rockets were now small fan-like constructs on the bottom. Behold, baby number 626 2.0, the hover boots. I figured that since the rockets weren't as controllable, these would be much better alternatives. You still get to move fast while having better control. Hey, that actually sounds pretty cool, Hatsume. Izuku commended. Kyoka was a bit more skeptical thought. Yeah, but, do they work? May lifted her head, her eyes confidently closed. I've yet to figure that out, but they should, at least I'm 95% sure. What's the other 5%? Ochako questioned. They spontaneously combust and blow up. Gotta leave a margin for error somewhere, right? The group of friends all felt drops of nervous sweat form at the mad inventor's words. Perhaps it's best if we all stay away from those when you decide to test them. Momo noted. Right then and there, though, Pink Blur suddenly popped up right next to them and blurted out, "Test what now?" Everyone yelped at the sudden voice, but once everyone gathered themselves, they quickly realized who it was, Mina. Kyoka, Momo and Ochako all shouted. The horned, pink girl cheerily waved to all of them with a bright, happy smile. Hi guys. Fancy meeting you all out here. Ishido, why wouldn't we be out here? Tenya pointed out. The school day is over. Semantics. Mina waved off as she peered closer to the hover boots. Ooh, what are these thingies? A gasp came from her as she snapped her head up to May excitedly. Ah, oh my gosh, are you in the support course? Did you make these? They're so cool. May blinked in surprise before smiling herself, realizing that the new pink girl was complimenting her work. She lifted her invention confidently and answered, yes, yes, and thank you very much. May glanced over to her compatriots curiously. Is she another friend of yours? Because if so, I like her already. The teens eyed one another before Kyoka gave an answer. She's a fellow classmate. Ah, come on Jiro. Mina skipped right over to the earphone jack user and put an arm over her and Ochako's shoulders. I'd like to consider everyone in class a friend. Kyoka quirked a brow to the horned girl. Really? Even Bakugo? Mina's eyes shifted to the side sheepishly. Hee, well, he's definitely a tough nut to crack, but I'm sure he'll come around, eventually. She pointed over toward the school, or more specifically, the two boys who were walking over from the school. Heck, just ask Kirishima. He's been trying to appeal to Bakugo's good side since the villain attack. Ain't that right, Kirishima? The group set their attention to the spiky redhead in question, who was approaching the group with Denki Kaminari beside him. Hey, well, kinda. Eijiro admitted. Honestly, I think he's got a lot of potential as a hero. He wore a sharp-toothed smirk as he clenched his fist. The way he handled the villain attack was just so manly, ya know. Ya gotta give him credit for that, right? The others couldn't help but start at Eijiro in utter confusion. Manly? Momo questioned. Yeah, you know, someone who doesn't give in under pressure, even in the face of danger. Eijiro's hand clenched tighter and he raised it up to the sky. Someone who doesn't give up no matter how bad the situation, a real man's man. The others were left in a state of baffled silence, their eyes trailing over to Denki in hopes that he might have some answers. But if anything, the electric blonde was just as lost. Hey, don't you guys look at me. He said with a wave of his hands. He's been talking about that, manly, stuff since I first met him last week, and even I don't fully understand it yet. Kyoka hummed before concentrating back onto Iroh. Kirishima, I get you're all about the manly stuff, but I think that Bakugo really shouldn't be seen as a role model. She turned to the street again while craning her head back toward the redhead. Word of advice, you wanna be a manly hero. Don't take Katsuki Bakugo as an example. Come on, Jiro. Eijiro tried to appeal. I mean, sure, he's a hothead and can be pretty rude, but I think given the right circumstances, he could be a great hero. Maybe, but I doubt he's here for the right reasons. Kyoka emphasized as she gave a soft glare to Izuku, who laughed nervously. Mina couldn't help but raise a brow at that, along with many of the others. What's that supposed to? Oh, would you look at that? Our rides are here. Kyoka pointed down the street towards the two approaching vehicles, the familiar yellow and pink cars pulling up right to the curb. She set her eyes onto Mina, Eijiro and Denki again and asked, you guys want a lift, too? We're gonna be dropping Iida and Chaco off at the station. Admittedly, the teens were still somewhat lingering on the last point the punk rocker made, but Mina's eyes couldn't help but light up at the sight of the Lotus Elise that pulled right to a stop. Ooh, would we ever? Not every day you get to ride in a sports car. And, wait, that other one's kinda familiar. Yeah, that's 'cause you've met its owner before. Izuku explained before knocking on the glass window on the driver's side. The window slowly rolled down, revealing a certain blonde young man sitting behind the wheel. Guys, you remember Brian, right? Denki and Eijiro's eyebrows rose up at the sight of him, the two instantly recognizing his face. Hey yeah, he's All Might's intern, isn't he? Denki approached the beetle curiously and pointed to the young man. You were there during our first training sesh with All Might, I think. Just then, Brian's radio switched on and he replied, ZRKT, ding ding ding. And we have a winner. ZRKT, how's it going? It's going pretty good. Eijiro uttered in surprise. I'm guessing you speak through your radio. Yep, all part of his quirk, Spiky. May answered. Our friend's mute, but his quirk lets him control his radio through technopathy. Pretty neat, right? Oh yeah, wait, did you just call me, Spiky? Kyoka waved it off. Hatsume likes giving nicknames to people. Helps her remember them better. Mina's eyes brightened up as she faced May once again. Ooh, so cool. What would my nickname be then? Oh, that's easy. May winked as she pointed to the acid user. Your nickname is Pinky, and in one fell swoop, May watched as Mina visibly deflated, and the inventor's expression became etched with concern. Too on the nose. Kinda, yeah. May shifted her eyes left and right before coming to a conclusion. I mean, Mina isn't exactly a hard name to remember, so, would you mind if I just called you that? The horned girl's smile returned instantly. Oh, you bet I don't mind at all. Feel free to call me anything so long as it ain't Pinky. Ochako blinked in realization. Wait, we can get our nicknames changed. She raised her hand and vehemently asked, if that's the case, could I not be called Rosy Cheeks, please? Excuse me, but what's all this talk about nicknames? Everyone's attention went to the Elise as a certain young pink-haired woman stepped out of it, her blue eyes concentrated on the group. Because I'd sure like to have one. Oh, Sadie. Momo went over and reached for her hand, leading her over to the others. How rude of me, I neglected to introduce you. She reached the others and presented, Sadie, to Mina, Eijiro and Denki. Everyone, this is Sadie, she's a family friend from America who's staying with us for a little while. And Sadie, these are some of my classmates, Min. Hi. Mina literally jumped up to Sadie, taking her by surprise. I'm Mina Ishido. And I just wanna say you have one of the coolest cars ever. While she was taken aback, Sadie felt it only appropriate to take the compliment. Oh, thank you, I definitely like to keep her in top shape. She reached back and tapped her hand on her hood somewhat awkwardly. Hey, yep, she's my baby. Eijiro gave an approving nod. Heck yeah, Taken, care of your wheels is super manly. But then, he saw Sadie's brow raise at him, and it was then that he realized what he just said. Not that you're manly or anything, I mean, it's cool that you're able to do that kinda stuff, I just meant. Denki rolled his eyes and elbowed his friend in the ribs. Dude, you're overthinking this. The others couldn't help but chuckle at how flustered Eijiro had become, but thankfully, Denki's words had snapped him out of it. Right, probably best to start over. Through his nervousness, he wore a smile and thumbed toward himself. My name's Eijiro Kirishima. Nice to meet ya, Sadie. Likewise. Sadie bowed her head to the redhead before her eyes found Denki. And you would be. Without missing a beat, Denki crossed his arms with a confident grin, leaning towards Sadie with a single finger pointed at her. I would be Denki Kaminari. Future pro hero, awesome student who survived a villain attack, and most importantly, he brushed a hand through his hair and gave Sadie a wink. Certified ladies' man. A collective groan echoed from everyone there, especially the girls themselves. Yeah, right. Kyoka rolled her eyes, all while taking note that Brian was now glaring at Denki. Maybe on the planet Xenon or something. There is no such planet. Sadie shook her head. Believe me, I would know. She sent an amused smile to Denki. And while I'm sure you're nice, Denki, I'm far too old for you. Like, much too old. Yeah, kinda figured. Denki shrugged. But hey, ya gotta give me props for trying right. After yet another groan, Sadie decided to get back to the initial conversation. Well, either way, it's very nice to meet you all. I wasn't aware that Momo had so many friends here at UA already. It's a slow process, Sadie. Momo placed a hand to the young woman's shoulder. After all, I've only known everyone for about a week now. Just then, Mina popped right back up again. Well, yeah, obviously. But I like to think that us as a class have only banded together more ever since that villain attack. She bounded over to Eijiro and Denki, setting her hands on each of their shoulders. That experience will stick with us all throughout our time here, I guarantee it. Izuku put a hand to his chin again. Ishido makes a good point. If anything, it's an experience that no other hero course class before us has had. Yeah, why do you think all the other students were scouting us out today? Denki put his hands behind his head with a proud grin. We're totally big deals. We've been on the news and everything, well, for a day at least. Then the whole meteor shower happened and now there's two talks of the town. Ochako nodded at that. Yep, this past week has been something else. She trailed her eyes over to Sadie again. I mean, just ask Sadie. she nearly got hit by one of those falling space rocks, didn't you? Mina's eyes widened and she let out a massive gasp. Ah, you did. Oh my gosh, Sadie, how close were you to it? Ooh, yeah, I was pretty close alright, Sadie nodded, intent on keeping her cover. I was actually close to the train station when those things came down. That space rock nearly turned my ride into a crater, but thankfully I got out of the way in time. Wow. Mina jumped in place before leaping right up to the young woman. You're extremely lucky to both be alive and to be that close to one of them. But get this, Mina shifted her eyes left and right, making sure that no one else was listening in before whispering to Sadie, those meteorites. They aren't space rocks. It's space metal. All at once, Sadie's eyes snapped open, her attention now fully focused on Mina with Brian also staring at her in shock. Wait, how do you know that? Oh, I just salvaged a bit of the debris while no one was looking. Mina cheekily answered. You salvaged the wreckage, Sadie exclaimed as she moved in on Mina, leaving everyone stunned. You should not have done that. Mina, surprised by the sudden outburst, awkwardly responded. Well, yeah, I probably shouldn't have, but it was way too good of an opportunity to pass up. She wore a wicked grin as she gave Sadie a knowing wink. I've actually got it back at my house, so I could show it you tomorrow if y'all want. However, if Sadie's expression was anything to go by, she was less than amused. Mina, you have no idea the amount of danger you could potentially be in. Do you even know what you have? Not yet, but I have a working theory. The pink girl put her hands up as she set up her idea. Okay, so after the meteor's crash, a bunch of emergency vehicles rushed onto the scene, and then from the crash site, two identical vehicles actually drove away from the scene. Mina pointed over to Eijiro and Denki, who were growing all the more nervous. Kirishima and Kaminari can back me up on this, we all saw it. But given how strange it was, my working theory is that those meteors actually contained a bunch of shape-shifting aliens that are now hiding among us. A series of groans elicited from the group of teens while Izuku, Kyoka, Momo and Mei all stared at Sadie in panic, immediately taking note of their friend's change in demeanor. Denki, however, had decided to step in. Come on Mina, could ya maybe not scare the poor woman with your conspiracy theory? Indeed, it is very rude. Tenya admonished with his usual stiff hand gestures. Besides, it's best to not cause a scene in front of the school like this. HMPH. Mina pouted with her arms crossed, glancing away from the two. You guys are so no fun, it's, huh. Just as she looked away, however, Mina spotted something that seemed very out of place. Around the corner, she could see two identical black sports cars, ones that were pretty sleek in design right down to their headlights and spoilers. Her head perked up and pointed over to them. Guys. I might have just watched too many movies, but I'm pretty sure that a pair of similar black cars isn't exactly a good thing to see, right? Sadie furrowed her brow, but nevertheless followed where Mina was pointing. What are you talking about? But she cut herself off the moment her eyes laid onto the sports cars, and her sights zoomed in on the familiar, chilling faction symbol right on their grills. It was all she could do to find anything to say, and when she finally uttered something, it was the last thing that anyone wanted to hear. Oh no. Izuku immediately went on high alert when she said that. Oh no. Sadie, what's? They're here, already, Sadie exclaimed. And just like that, Izuku could feel the blood drain from his face, and he could see Kyoka, Momo and Mei all have the same reaction. No, it's way too soon, how can? Rotten luck, that's how. Sadie clenched her fist and spun around to the five teens who were not in on the whole thing, her features making it clear that she was being absolutely serious at this point. Kids, I want you to listen to me right now. You all need to run and VRRRM. Whatever her initial plans were, however, they quickly changed the moment she heard the black car's engines rev up and their wheels start screeching as they pulled around the corner. Frag it. Immediately, she opened her doors and Brian did the same, all while Sadie pointed to the cars. Everyone get in, now. Ochako, now quite scared and panicked, tried to ask the question on everyone's minds. Whoa, hey, what's going, She didn't get to finish as Sadie pushed her, Momo, Eijiro, Mina and Denki right to her car as her own engine started. There's no time. Get in now. Izuku and Kyoka immediately did the same with Tenya as well, with Mei taking the front seat in the Beetle. "Sadie's right, we need to go now," Kyoka asserted. What in the world is going on?" Tenya belted out as he was pushed into the back seat. Izuku buckled in next to him, and Tenya was taken aback by just how scared yet intensely focused his friend seemed to be in that moment. "Iida, remember when Sadie asked Mina if she knew how much danger she was in? Well, I guess this would apply here." He leaned forward and snapped his head toward Brian. Drive. ZRKT, shut up and drive." The blonde agreed through his radio before slamming on the gas as hard as he could. The Volkswagen's tires screeched as they spun before the car shot away from the curb, followed closely behind by the pink Lotus behind him. In said Lotus, things were a lot less calm, namely because Momo was the only human in there who knew just what was happening. The other four were all piled in the back seat, squished up against one another awkwardly as they all started asking questions. "What the hell is going on?" Denki shouted. "Who are those guys driving after us?" Eijiro added, seeing that the black cars were following right after them. "Pete, please tell me we're not gonna die." Ochako cried out with her hands on her head as tears began forming in her eyes. Mina peered up to Sadie fearfully, the pink girl trembling as she asked, Is this what you meant about me being in danger? Are those cars from the government who've been sent to kidnap me because I stole that salvage?" Her hands went up and she gripped her horns in fear. "Oh, or is this because I know too much about the aliens that the government's come to wipe my mind?" "No, Mina." Sadie shook her head. "It's not the government, it's something far, far worse." Momo eyed Mina over her shoulder apologetically. "Although, you probably do know a bit too much." This left the acid user visibly shocked before Momo set her focus back onto the road ahead. "Now everybody hold on. We have to get out of the city and to a safe place." With that, the pink and yellow vehicles sped ahead, doing their best to outspeed the black cars behind them. That unfortunately wasn't too easy, especially when they turned onto a multi-lane street. Seeing an opportunity, the black cars sped up and separated, moving to either side of Bumblebee to try and clamp down on him. "Gah, we're being boxed in," Mei shouted. Brakes," Kyoka hollered. The bug buzzed an acknowledgement, knowing exactly what to do as he pumped his foot down on the brakes, slowing right down so that instead of the two cars colliding into him, they hit each other, resulting in them skidding along the street and spinning out. Brian smirked as he sped ahead, leaving the two enemy vehicles to become the enemies of every other person driving on the street as horns started blaring. As the black vehicles began to correct themselves, however, one of them activated its communicator. "Commander, we've spotted two Autobots and we're in pursuit." "Ah, excellent," a rather sinister, raspy voice replied from the other end. "So, our hunch was correct then. Send for the rest of your recon team and continue your pursuit." "Of course, Commander, but we've run into a problem." The black car continued as it and its compatriots continued to drive. "They're with several unidentified organic beings. We have yet to correlate the relations between them as of now, but... Do I sound like I give a petro rabbit's foot about a few organics?" The voice suddenly snapped over the comm. "Destroy them all. Meanwhile, Brian and Sadie swerved right onto the freeway, though they weren't exactly out of the woods yet. "Ah, what in the world is this?" Tenya practically screamed, his eyes wide and dead set on Izuku and Kyoka. "You two had better have a good reason for what's going on or so help me." "Trust me, Iida, there's really no easy explanation for what's going on," Izuku said firmly, matching his friend's gaze. "You're going to have to wait until we're out of this situation first, okay?" Tenya shook his head vehemently. "No, whatever this is, I need to know now so that we can tell the proper authorities. It's obvious that we're in the middle of some sort of villain attack, so..." Kyoka raised her hand up to stop him right there. "Not a villain attack, Iida. And even then, no law enforcement on Earth can stop these things." She craned her head to the back window, seeing that the two cars were back in hot pursuit, and now that they were on the highway, they could see several more black cars starting to pursue them as well. Shit, they brought friends. What's more, the cars were now bringing out the big guns, quite literally as each vehicle suddenly sprouted a pair of side guns from their hoods. Mei glanced into her rearview mirror and gasped. "Evasive maneuvers." As if on cue, the guns began firing several red laser blasts from their barrels, all of them flying toward the pink and yellow cars that were trying to escape them. Thankfully, the two drivers had heeded May's words and began swerving from side to side in a serpentine maneuver, avoiding the laser fire as several other cars began to stop and honk their horns. Thankfully, no civilians seemed hurt, but this didn't do well for anyone's moods inside the cars being chased. Why are these guys shooting at us? Eijiro snapped. Sadie glanced up to him in her rearview with a furrowed brow. Long story, kid, and those aren't guys. As the chase went on, however, they all passed by another on-ramp, and right in the nick of time, a certain white Porsche with red and blue racing stripes came pulling off onto the freeway. With seamless expertise, the Porsche weaved right into the chase and backed his rear bumper right into one of the black cars with just enough force to send it swerving right into its compatriots, causing a small cluster to form on the side of the road. "Ha, take that Decepti chump," the Porsche said before pulling up right next to the Beetle, activating his comlink to speak with the kids inside. "You cats need an assist." Do we ever?" Kyoka sighed in relief. "Jazz, you're a lifesaver." Over in Sadie's car, everyone was staring at the Porsche with wide eyes. "Friend of yours," Denki uttered. "Family," Sadie emphasized. "And right on time, too." Back over in the Beetle, however, what is going on? Tenya gasped the moment he peered out the side window, and saw that there was no driver behind the Porsche next to them. That car is driving itself." There was a long silence before Jazz piped up again. "Did I jump in at a bad time?" Sadie responded this time. "Kinda sorta. We now have 5 more kids to worry about. The cons decided to pick the absolute worst time to ambush us." "Sadie, what are you talking about?" Ochako shrieked, her voice cracking as her fear grew. "Just please, tell us what's going on." The pink-haired woman spun around in her seat and reached out to the brunette, placing her hand over the younger girl's reassuringly. "Don't worry, Ochako, sweetie, I will explain what's happening. But first, we have to get to safety." Probably won't be that easy." Jazz pointed out. "Our playmates are back." Sure enough, the 6 black and cars had gotten back on track and were now set on closing in on them. Gimme a hand with these scrap heaps." Brian gave a thumbs up and began blocking the black sports cars along with Jazz, matching every movement they made, that is until a third lane opened up on the freeway. One of the Viacons immediately took advantage and sped up on Jazz's side, knocking into him and sending him off course. Ow! Bam! The teens all gasped as they watched Jazz screech to a halt against a guardrail, the other Viacons leaving him in the dust. Don't worry about me. Just keep going, I'll catch up." As much as they didn't want to, Sadie and Brian knew that they must, and before long, they found themselves moving into a heavily forested area just outside of the city, and there was a part of the freeway that was closed off for repairs. "Okay, I spy an opportunity to get off here and make sure the civilians stay safe." Sadie spoke up, her features serious as she turned back to the teens in the backseat. "But you're going to have to trust me on this one." "Trust you?" Denki cried out. "You're the one who got us into this whole mess in the first place." Eijiro barked. "I know, and I'm sorry for that." Sadie sincerely apologized. "But right now, the way we're all going to get out of this mess is if we take this down into the forest. Now, do you trust me?" Momo gave Sadie a resolute nod. "You know I do." After a few seconds, Ochako put on a brave face and nodded as well. "I do, too. The sooner we get away from those, whatever they are, the better." "Bring it on," Mina bellowed out with raised fists. "I'm not scared of a little action, let's do this." Slowly but surely, Denki and Eijiro hesitantly nodded as well, though they still seemed to be a little unsure. Sadie smiled and set her eyes back to the front. "All right, here we go." All at once, Sadie swerved onto the part of the freeway that was closed off, with Bumblebee following right behind her. She took notice of a downed part of the guardrail, making for the perfect escape route. "Okay, on my mark, 3, 2, 1, hold on." Sadie's tires screeched as she drove off the side of the highway, causing everyone to scream before the car landed on the ground, driving down a grassy slope before skidding to a halt in a large clearing far below the highway itself. "Is everyone intact?" She was met with a slew of pale green expressions, with everyone still bracing themselves securely as if they were still falling. Shakily, Eijiro moved his head up to her and replied, "Define, intact." Not far away, the Volkswagen had done the same as them and landed safely as well, pulling to a halt and opening its doors immediately. Mei, Izuku and Kyoka all filed out of the car, while Tenya ended up flopping out on his stomach, the spectacled young man shouting in relief at the top of his lungs. Sadie sighed and opened her doors as well. "Okay, everyone move out in single file. We're not out of the woods yet." Ironically enough, Denki commented as they all stepped out as well, quickly regrouping with the others. "Hey guys. Have a nice landing." No, we did not." Tenya shot right up to his feet and stormed up to Izuku, who raised his hands defensively in panic. "Midoriya, I have no idea what you and your friends have just put us through, but we need an explanation, now." Eijiro stepped up as well, and while he wasn't as ticked as Tenya, he was still clearly upset. "He's right, man, it's time to spill. It's obvious that you guys know something, so just what the hell is going on around here?" Before Izuku or any of the girls could give Eijiro an answer, the sound of rumbling engines suddenly came to their ears again. With apprehensive eyes, the group of teens all set their eyes up toward the top of the slope to see the 6 black vehicles coming directly toward the clearing, even ramming through several small trees to get to their destination. The quirk inheritor clenched his fists and wore a brave face as they drew ever closer. "I think you guys are about to find out." The black cars finally made it to the bottom of the hill and swerved to a halt on the dirt path in the clearing, and then, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. All at once, the cars began to change shape, their parts shifting around quickly until they had transformed into their robot modes. Just like the cars themselves, all of them were identical, with their back wheels and wheel wells having formed their shoulders while their front ends unfolded to form their legs, with the wheels moving into their ankles. The door panels folded into their arms while the roof of the car could be seen on their backs. The robots themselves were quite thin and very sharp, for lack of a better word. They all had expressionless faces that had sharp V-shaped visors, giving them a menacing appearance. They had 3-fingered hands with sharp claws, feet that ended in a sharp, pointed boot, and broad-shouldered torsos that had mostly purple plating with a silver pectoral plate, that a familiar insignia that Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo recognized all too well. And needless to say, Tenya, Eijiro, Ochako, Mina and Denki were all left completely and utterly speechless. Their jaws all hung open, their eyes almost bugging out of their heads as the Decepticons stood ready for battle. Izuku and Kyoka did their best to glare back at the cons while Mei and Momo stood protectively in front of their friends, even though they knew the situation they were in wasn't a good one. "Well, this day definitely could have gone better," Kyoka commented. "No doubt about that," Izuku agreed. Just then, though, Sadie and Brian pulled up in front of the teens, the former shooting them a warning look. "Okay, guys, you get your friends away from here on the double." As she said that, her and Brian's forms began to flicker in and out of existence before disappearing entirely, leaving the 5 newcomers even more stunned. "We're dealing with Viacons, so this is going to get messy." Ochako, finally finding her voice, was suddenly much more scared than she had been. Sadie. Where did she? WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. As if to answer her question, RC and Bumblebee transformed into their robot modes, the two standing tall and causing all of the teens' minds to officially break. Momo put a hand on Ochako's shoulder to try and bring her back to reality. Long story short, Sadie and Brian aren't who you thought they were. Guys, meet RC and Bumblebee. The pink Autobot glared at the Viacon troopers and took a combat stance, with Bumblebee doing the same. "This ends here, cons." Without wasting time, the duo began running forward, just as the Viacons all began to convert their arms into the same laser blasters that they had used before and began firing at them. Immediately seeing the danger, Izuku and the girls began leading their classmates to safety. Quick, we gotta get out of the line of fire," Mei insisted as she pushed against Tenya's larger frame. Thankfully, that got Tenya to snap out of his stupor, though for the life of him, he couldn't stop staring at the scene before him. What are they? Ajiro blinked and tried to come up with an answer. Cars that turn into robots, or the other way around. Yeah, the other way around. Kyoka confirmed as she continued to try and usher her classmates to a safe distance. Now come on, we gotta get. But right then, she noticed that Mina's astonishment was slowly but surely morphing into one of the widest grins she had ever seen, and it was only then that she realized, oh no. I was re-GHT. Mina pumped her fists up into the air and pointed her finger at the entire group, sweeping her hand across them. You all said that my theory was crackpot and had no weight to it, but I was right. She thrust her arms toward the fight in progress. Alien shapeshifters, granted, I didn't think that they'd be robot alien shapeshifters, but still. She raised her arms up into the air once more. I was right. This is so freaking awesome. But then, Mina's eyes snapped open in realization, and she whirled around toward Izuku, Kyoka, Mei and Momo. And you guys knew. The four grew rather sheepish as the rest of their classmates all sent judgmental gazes their way, with Ochako even crossing her arms expectantly. How long? Izuku gulped down his apprehension and answered, S6 months. Ditto. Mei added, only about 2 for me. Kyoka put in. Momo tapped her fingers together with a nervous chuckle. Hee, and I only just found out last week, during the villain attack on the USJ. Ajiros gave a gasp the moment she said that. Ah, wait, that's right. Brian, the beetle was in the USJ at the same time as the villain attack. It must have transformed and broke into hell. Denki scratched the side of his head as he remembered one other important part. Hey yeah. He even helped incapacitate that Nomu that All Might took down. Tenya furrowed his brow at the conclusion the duo had come to. Interesting, his focus shifted back to the battle at hand. So if that's the case, then those bots must be good guys, yes, Kyoka affirmed. And those red-eyed bots. Not to state the obvious or anything, but they are the bad guys, and it's best that we steer clear from them as much as possible. Kyoka's right, guys. Izuku concurred. We promise that we'll fill you in on everything once we're out of danger, but for now, we've got to get to cover. As the teens discussed what was going on, RC and Bumblebee had engaged the enemy without hesitation, even as all 6 Viacons began to unleash laser blasts upon them. RC in particular was very light on her feet as she effortlessly dodged all of the blasts while running, though Bumblebee had to pull off some tuck and rolls to avoid getting blasted himself. In one such instance, he actually transformed back into his vehicle mode to build up some speed. Finally, the 2 Autobots closed the distance between them and the Viacons, rather painfully as RC immediately kicked one in the head while Bumblebee slid into his robot mode and did a low sweep on another, tripping it up. ZRKT, have a nice trip. Bumblebee's hand pulled into his wrist and he brought out his stinger, before then stabbing it right into the downed Khan's neck area to give him an intense electric shock. ZRTK, see ya next fall. Don't get too cocky, B. RC warned as she flipped away from another Viacon before jump kicking it right in its chest, making it stumble backward and right into B's stinger. ZRKT, not my fault. ZKRT, that these guys are, ZRKT, total losers. B mocked as the Viacon fell over. However, just as he was about to move, he felt a clawed hand grab onto his neck and then lift him up, and it was at this point where B was starting to get scared. He felt certain memories begin to flash in his mind, ones of a certain other Decepticon picking him up by the neck before ripping out his voice box. Instinctually, he began to flail his legs about and he blasted through his radio, ZRKT, hey. ZRKT, let go. Make me, bug. The Viacon spat back as he tightened his grip around B's neck. Your head will make an excellent gift for Commander Star, blam. The Viacon never finished his sentence as a blue laser blast shot him straight through the chest and he collapsed in a heap, with Bumblebee rolling across the ground and onto his chest. The little yellow bot craned his head up and saw RC, the pink bot having pulled out her laser pistol. The barrel was still smoking, so she blew off the residual smoke, sending a smile down to him. I don't think they appreciate calling losers. I mean, they are, but still. Bumblebee was somewhat thankful that he wore a mouthguard, because if he didn't, RC would have seen the biggest nervous smiles ever. He knew that there was a reason why he admired this femme so much, and her being a crack shot was only part of it. ZRKT, hey, thanks, clang. Bumblebee let out a surprised buzz as he suddenly felt his legs swept right out from under him, taking both bots by surprise. RC went to his aid, but was cut off by another Viacon, one who wrenched her back by her shoulder and tossed her down to the ground forcefully. It went to deliver a sharp kick at her, but she rolled out of the way and back onto her feet, raising her pistol to blast at it more. It countered quickly by firing at her with its own built-in gun, but at the same time, it moved in ever closer to RC, so she tried a different approach. Once it took one step too close, RC put her pistol away and thrust herself toward the con, belting out a battle cry as she laid her fists into its face. "You leave this planet alone," she shouted with every punch, only for the Viacon to slowly turn his head down to her unfazed by her hits. RC grimaced as the con began firing again, though she managed to avoid the lasers by backflipping several feet back. All except for one solitary blast, which hit her in the abdomen and sent her sprawling onto the forest floor. RC. She could hear her human friends calling out to her in panic, though her optical sensors were currently in a daze due to the hit. That said, though, she didn't need to see clearly to know that a certain yellow blur must not have been faring much better. Bumblebee currently found himself in the middle of the four other Viacons. Two of them he had stung already, but apparently recovered quickly. ZRKT, come on guys. He implored through his radio. ZRKT, can't we talk about this? No we can't. Get him. With that, the Viacons all began piling up on Bumblebee, with each of them grabbing onto one of his limbs and wrestling him down to the dirt. The young scout gave a panicked buzz as each Viacon took a firm hold of one of his limbs, picking him up with clear malicious intent in their voices. Hee, not so confident now, are ya, bug? This is what ya get for talkin' us down like that. Another Viacon barked before eyeing his compatriots. So, who wants to rip their limb off first? Bumblebee's optics widened considerably and he was about to give another loud buzz in fear, but before he could, he heard a certain engine come revving in from the distance. He set his gaze up toward the highway above just in time to see a familiar Porsche come launching straight off of the roadway, falling straight down until a certain point where WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Jazz converted into his robot mode and came crashing down onto one of the Viacon's heads, the lieutenant slamming his foot on it before socking yet another one in the head, freeing up B's legs. The yellow bot buzzed victoriously as he firmly set his feet on the ground and pulled the Viacons down with him, flipping them over onto their backs. He smiled up to Jazz and gave him a thumbs up. ZRKT, right on time. Thanks. Jazz rubbed the back of his help. Would have been here, lot sooner if the cons hadn't taken me out back there. Sorry, B, whoa. The visored Autobot leapt up just in time and dodged a sweeping kick from one of the Viacons, which Bumblebee was also wary of, so he got out of the way as well. Hey, what's your deal, man? Can't ya see we're talking here? Blow it out your tailpipe. One of the Viacons said as all four of them began to form up again. We've got a mission to accomplish, and that involves taking all of you Autobots out. Speaking of, the Viacon moved his head toward the downed RC, where the fifth Viacon was beginning to approach her. You might have a problem there. Jazz grit his teeth, but remained cool under the pressure, whispering over to his young friend. B, get over there as fast as you can. I'll handle these fools. B nodded and immediately transformed, and while the Viacons were quick to start shooting at him as he drove away, Jazz quickly brought out his own firearm. From his elbow down, his weapon took form, a double-barreled blaster in a vertical configuration with an ammo clip sticking out of the side, along with a scope attached to the top of it. Oh, I don't think so. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat. All at once, Jazz let loose with his weapon, which as it turned out, was actually a submachine gun type weapon that unloaded laser fire at a high rate of speed. The Viacons were all taken aback as they felt their armor being pierced by the blasts, and they were all forced to take cover as their attention was now squarely on Jazz. A subsonic repeater. One of the Viacons grunted. Are you serious? Oh yeah, baby. Jazz smirked as he reloaded his weapon. Autobot standard issue. While Jazz continued firing at the Viacons, Bumblebee had managed to make it over to RC, ramming straight into her attacker's legs and tripping him up. He screeched to a halt next to RC and transformed once more, offering her a hand. Thanks, B. That con got in a lucky shot. The femme dusted off her chassis before narrowing her optics at the Viacon in question. Now, the gloves come off. RC reached around to her backpack and pulled out 2 glowing energy blades, performing a brief kata with them before setting on the Viacon with a righteous battle cry. Yeah, shink. RC slid to a halt after swiping her blades cleanly through the Viacon, and while it appeared nothing had happened initially, that was quickly proven false when the foot soldier fell into 4 bits behind her. And then, blam, the body erupted into flames with a brief explosion, making RC smirk. Game over. Not yet, it ain't. Jazz called out as he flipped right over to his 2 Autobot comrades, continuing his solo assault on the 4 remaining Viacons. We still got them to take down. The Autobots took defensive positions as the Viacons kept up their approach, firing their laser blasters without relent. Keep on them, one of them shouted. The commander's orders were to destroy them all. RC and Bumblebee pulled out their own weapons to join Jazz in the fray, but then something unexpected happened. Hey! The blasting immediately stopped as the 6 robots set their sights off into the trees, where Mina had just jumped out from behind a bush. Tenya and Ajiro had followed her out to try and pull her back in, but to no avail. Leave them alone, you big bullies. It was at that moment when one of the Viacons realized, wait, weren't we supposed to destroy the organics as well? Oops, Mina uttered as a chill went down her spine. Yeah, bad call there. Ajiro agreed. Another Viacon pointed over to the humans, who were all now in plain view as they tried run away. You get them. We'll handle the Autobots. No. RC cried out as she and Bumblebee went to make a mad sprint for the teens, only to be immediately met with Viacons ramming into them. Jazz lifted his arm and his hand retracted, revealing some sort of grapple. But before he could use it, another Viacon rushed up to him and grabbed his arm, tossing the visored Autobot over his shoulder and slamming him onto the ground. RC kept pushing against her adversary, trying to get a clear view of the children as the last Viacon pursued them. Gah, kids, get away from here. Already on it, Izuku shouted. The Quark inheritor glanced over his shoulder to see if they were getting any further from the Viacon, only for his stomach to drop at the sight of it only getting ever closer. The foot soldier was even knocking down massive trees to try and get at them, eliciting terrified screams from everybody. Guys, keep going and don't look. But it was too late. A duo of blood-curdling screams came out of Mina and Ochako's throats as the Viacon managed to catch up and take up both of them in its grasp. No. Kyoka skid to a halt, her eyes wide in fear. Ochako. Mina. Help. Ochako cried as the Viacon brought them closer to its face. She pounded her fists against its metal fingers as tears began streaming down her cheeks. Somebody please, help us. Ajiro grit his teeth and clenched his fist in ire at the robot. Let them go. Or so help me, I'm gonna. But the Viacon simply threw its head back and laughed. Ha ha ha, you'll do what, human? Just what does a little organic pest think it can do against a Decepticon? He set his blood-red visor onto Mina in particular. HM, I'm certain that Commander Starscream's got some interesting plans for all of you, he. With the gravity of her situation finally settling in, Mina clenched her jaw and acted on the first thing that came to her head, survive. Screw you. She screamed at the Viacon and brought her hands up, and all at once, blasted a stream of strong corrosive acid into its face. The Viacon staggered back, releasing his grip on Mina as his hands flew up to his visor. My optics. I can't see. Ishido. Ajiro sprinted forward and leapt with all his might, bringing his arms out to catch his friend. He managed to do so just before she hit the ground and he tumbled to a halt, setting her down as everyone else gathered around her. Ishido, are you alright? While her eyes were brimming with tears and she was breathing heavily, Mina nodded to her classmate. Why yeah, I'm fine. Thanks Kirishima, She gasped and snapped her head up, seeing that Ochako was still in the stumbling Viacon's other hand. Ochako. Help me. The brunette begged as she was being jerked around by the con. Use your quirk. Denki advised. It worked for Mina, it can work for you. Hearing the blonde's suggestion, Ochako had to admit, she was torn on the idea. On the one hand, they could get in really big trouble if anyone found out they were using their quirks in public without a hero license. But as she felt herself getting dizzier by the minute, she had to admit, there was no better option. Alright, here goes nothing. She touched her right hand onto the Viekon's finger and her left hand to her own face, and before long, both she and the Viekon were floating upward. Granted, doing all of this all at once wasn't doing wonder for her stomach, but she could feel the Viekon's grip on her loosening as she and it floated upward. What's going on? The Viekon flailed its legs as rose higher into the air. Why am I flying? You're floating, you big jerk. Ochako snapped as she slipped out of the Khan's grasp and pushed herself down toward the ground. And I'm out of here. Momo stood up and pulled back her sleeve, using her own quirk to create a long metal pole that she held up as Ochako came floating down. Uraraka, grab this. Ochako smiled in relief as she grabbed the pole, making sure that her pinkies were extended as she worked her way back down to solid ground. Once she was close enough, Momo extended her hand and clasped it over one of Ochako's in reassurance. Are you alright? I am now. The brunette sighed as she letting go of the metal pole, bringing all 5 of her fingertips together. Now, release. Her fingers glowed pink for a brief moment and she felt her gravity return to her, landing steadily on her feet. The Viekon wasn't so lucky though as it clattered down face first. MHA. That'll show you not to mess with, HRK. Unfortunately, Ochako went from jovial to sickly green in a second and her hand went to her mouth, though thankfully she made sure to rush over to the nearest bush before, blow. The other teens cringed at the sight, but didn't have long to be disgusted before the Viekon got back to its feet, now trembling with rage. You humans, will pay dearly for this. The Viekon bellowed and charged forward, ready to eviscerate the group, only to end up running into a few trees since its optics were still not functional. The teens deadpanned at the sight before May made a suggestion. So, anyone have any ideas on how to put this poor idiot out of its misery? Just one. Kyoka snapped her head toward Tenya with a serious gaze. Iida, you think you can get me close enough to one of its legs? What? Both Tenya and Izuku exclaimed. Jiro, what in the world are you thinking? The former admonished. Are you looking to get us both killed? Or worse, sent to jail for our illegal quirk use out in public? Kyoka shook her head. For one, look around, we're nowhere near a public place where anyone can see us. Secondly, Yaomomo, Mina and Ochako already used their quirks to get away from that thing. And thirdly, trust me, I've got a plan. She jabbed her thumb over her shoulder to the approaching Viekon, which was now genuinely coming toward them. Also, ya might wanna make a decision now. Tenya recoiled at the sight before thinking over everything that Kyoka had just said to him, and as much as he hated to admit it, they really didn't have much choice at the moment. With a bit of a grumble, Tenya reluctantly pulled up his pant legs, exposing his engines and preparing for a mad sprint. Very well, but only because our lives are in danger. Great, now get ready. Kyoka hopped up onto Tenya's back, all while Izuku stared at her in concern. You okay there, celery stick? Why yeah, just, be careful, okay. Izuku muttered his request sheepishly. I'd hate for you two to be crushed and all. Kyoka gave him a wink back. Don't worry, we'll be good. She saw Izuku smile back to her as she craned her head around to the other boys. Kirishima, Kaminari, on my mark, I want you guys to unload everything you got on that thing. It's gonna be coming down hard, so make for its face. The duo sent her a thumbs up. You got it, Jiro. Kirishima affirmed. We're behind ya on this. Good, now let's go, Iida. Right. Tenya entered a sprinting position as his engine quirk started to activate, his boosters beginning to light up with a bright light. Brace yourself. He felt Kyoka's grip on his shoulders increase and he gave a nod. Alright, here goes nothing. Zoom. With dust and exhaust erupting from where his feet once were, Tenya burst forth with intense speed right toward the blinded Viekon, and before either of them knew it, they had rushed right under the robot's legs. Alright, now what? Now, this. Kyoka extended her jacks outward, plugging them into each of the Viekon's legs before channeling her heartbeat through them, using her quirk at its fullest. And thankfully, it did just what she was hoping it would do. Yeah. The Viacon stopped in its tracks as it felt its legs suddenly give out from under it, a paralyzing feeling going up and down them before falling straight to the ground once more. Kyoka pulled her jacks back and pumped a fist as Tenya slid to a halt. Ha. It worked. Eat dirt, Decepti creep. Eijiro hardened both of his fists as much as he could, smashing them together eagerly. Behind him, Denki began to channel his electricity as well. Alright, our turn. Gra ahh. The spiky redhead charged right up to the fallen Viacon's face and began punching it as hard as he could, his hardened fists managing to break apart its metal faceplate more and more. Take this, you hunk of garbage. By the time he was done, Eijiro had worked his way down to the inner workings of the robot's head, which now trembled in agony. Kaminari. Finish this. On it. Denki ran right up and grabbed hold of the Viacon's head, with lightning dancing all around them and coursing into the metal being. Eat 10,000 volts, ya big scrap heap. Og. With that, the electric blonde let loose with everything he had, the Viacon screaming his last before the intense amount of electricity became too much for him to bear. His head overloaded and, boom. It blew up into a billow of smoke, which Denki was right next to. Kaminari. Izuku called out as he and the others ran to his side. He was still standing, thankfully, but he wasn't moving at all. Are you alright? Once the smoke cleared, everyone saw that Denki's upper body was still very much intact, albeit covered in soot. And when he turned around, he was giving 2 thumbs up with a spaced-out smile, his eyes completely dazed as drool trickled from his lips. The teens deadpanned, but smiled nonetheless. Yeah, he's good. Mina chuckled before her eyebrows rose up in realization. Holy crap, do you guys realize what we just did? She shook Momo's shoulders in excitement. We just escaped and took down a giant killer robot all by ourselves. One that wasn't programmed by UA. The realization began to set in for the others as well, who gradually began smiling at the result. Huh, I suppose we did. Kyoka smirked. I mean, it's not exactly the first time for us, but... Wait, you guys took down some of these things before. Ochako cut her off. Seriously, what the heck have you guys been doing over the past couple of weeks? Izuku was about to answer that, but was cut off by the sound of gunfire and yelling not too far away. We'll talk about that later. Right now, we've gotta regroup with RC and the others. Come on. The greenette sprinted through the woods with the others following close behind. However, the moment they stepped out from the trees, they were met with a relieving sight. RC, Bumblebee and Jazz all stood tall over the remaining Viacons, with all 3 of them clearly dead and filled with plenty of holes. As Bumblebee and Jazz stacked the bodies up into a pile, RC moved her head around just in time to see the teens come walking out toward them, a sigh escaping her lips. Oh, thank Primus. You kids managed to get away. Where's the Viacon? How'd you lose it? Oh, we didn't lose it, RC. May said proudly as she gestured over to the others. These guys worked together to take it down. What? RC's optics blinked in shock as Jazz and B both whirled around to them. Did you say that they took the con down? Yes ma'am. Mina saluted. That, Viacon, didn't know what hit it. Huh, well paint me black and yellow and call me jackpot. Jazz strolled up to the humans and crouched down to their level, raising thumbs up to them. Sounds like you cool cats didn't need our help after all. Nice work. But at that moment, he heard Denki let out a rather silly moaning sound and he glanced over, only to do a double take at the rather spaced out grin that the blonde was wearing. Is he gonna be okay? He should. Kirishima shrugged. But hey, thanks for the blam. Whoa. Everyone ducked as another laser blast came flying at them, courtesy of the Viacon that RC had shot in the chest earlier. He was clutching the sparking hole in his chest, but nevertheless, he had gotten back up. MHA. I knew that if I played Cyber Possum long enough, you'd let your guards down. The Autobots took defensive positions as the humans began to back away again, all while the Viacon continued postulating. I have to say, I didn't expect such resistance from a small group of Autobots and organics. But now, I think it's time we called in the FWOOSH. Huh. Everyone's heads snapped upward at the sound of jet engines, just in time to see a certain red and black VTOL jet come rushing down in a nosedive toward the Viacon. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHK. In the blink of an eye, Windblade transformed into her robot mode and brought out her Stormfall sword, lifting it high above her head as she belted out a battle cry. Yah! Shink! With a single swipe, Windblade sliced through the Viacon like a hot knife through butter, cutting the foot soldier in half before both halves collapsed. Windblade sheathed her sword and turned back to the rest of her team. "Ha, well, that takes care of that." Windblade, RC and Bumblebee were both surprised at the city speaker's sudden arrival, to say the least. "Wah, how did you know where we were?" "Jazz called me up." Windblade nudged her head over to the lieutenant, who smirked right back at her. "He said that you guys might need a hand and I was nearby." She grimaced down to the fallen Viacons, an ominous feeling beginning to take hold of her spark. "That said, this isn't good. Viacons on Earth can only mean that." That was amazing. Windblade suddenly found herself cut off by an unknown voice, one that made her spin around in alarm. But when she saw that the source was Mina, it only made her anxiety grow. And it got worse when she saw Ochako, Tenya, Eijiro and Denki amongst the rest of their compatriots, who appeared to be rather nervous themselves. Mina, however, was all smiles as she requested, "Can you do it again?" Windblade could only think of one word to say: scrap. And it's the end of Season 2 Part 2 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.